Welcome back to He's a Giant, a pod about all things Giants football and all things college football. I'm your host Sal, here with my co-host Monty. What's going on, man?
What's going on, man? Doing good. Enjoyed a nice weekend of, the underwear Olympics and overanalyzing prospects. And, I love those physical comps people always throw out. Jeremiah was throwing it, our guy Walt, he started already getting on there doing it. It's fun, man. It's a fun time with all trying to start to do some historical numbers here.
Yeah, it's a fun time. I mean, I used to be there was a part of me that used to kind of like really kind of not look forward to things like the Senior Bowl and the Combine, especially when we started getting into this stuff. It was like, oh man, everybody's learning about these guys for the first time, and there are a lot of conclusions drawn about these kids after just a quick few looks. But I've learned to kind of really appreciate it. I think, I view it more as confirmation of what you think you're seeing on tape, the way we're looking at these guys. Are they really as athletic as you think? Do they, are they as explosive as you think? So it's a good confirmation. And there is something to the kids who test. I give them a lot of credit. They train like crazy for this thing. They work their butts off. And yeah, the testing is not really like reflective of how they're going to play, but I do think it's reflective of how they're going to train, and the work they put into it. So I've learned to appreciate the combine a whole lot more.
Yeah.
But
And it's hard to totally discount it. Like, even though as much as you want to go tape, somebody goes out there at a
yeah,
great size, great speed, and you're like, I can work with that. I can work with that. Like,
happens every year.
mhm.
Happens every year. So yeah, it was quite the combine, dude. I mean, there was nothing too shocking. I didn't really think there was anything that I didn't expect. I think, as expected, the groups that performed the best and that were the most impressive were the running backs and the D linemen. We've been saying all year, it's kind of the strength of this class. Um, but I thought the edge rushers did really well in performances, and really, like, there were some guys who showed speed that I didn't. I mean, I knew they were fast, but I didn't expect them to be that fast. And, so we can probably get into a few of those guys when we go through it. But it without doubt, the results of the combine are going to adjust people's boards. People are going to say, "Well, I had this guy in my top 40, but now he's in my top 25." Because of the way he
Mhm.
tested it, it confirms some questions I may have had. So stuff like that is going to happen. The boards are going to shift. You're definitely going to see a shift in mock drafts, things like that. For those of you who do them, the orders are definitely going to change now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like, I understand it's finding a tough mix of, you want to reward these guys going out there and showing up and, like, but at the same time, you don't want to, they say you don't want to count it twice. You already know a guy's athletic. You don't want to mark him up when you already bumped him up for being athletic. And then you also don't want to, like, kill a guy who had, didn't run the best 40, but he's fast on tape and he's great on tape. Like, it's tough. You got to, you obviously the stuff matters, but you got to be careful with, reading into it too much.
Yep. Before we get into all that, we have an episode planned where we're going to be going over a couple of prospects. We're going to try to do that every week going into the draft now, go over two, maybe three prospects that we get a chance to, guys that we just want to focus in on and do the reviews. And before we go into that, I mean, there is some news going on in Giants world. Nothing concrete, but it does seem like the quarterback search has reached a fever pitch at this point. Free agency is just a few days away, and I feel like this is sort of the culmination of the stare down between Joe Shane and perhaps Mike Bergonzi. There's a lot of
Mhm.
smoke coming out that Tennessee and the Giants are doing a dance around that first overall pick and a potential trade up. Lots of people in the national sports media feel like this trade's going to go down at some point. And the question is, w- if it happens, what will the Giants give up to get there? And how patient will Joe Shane be in working this trade? Because it seems like Mike Borgonzi and the Titans, as many of us had figured, have no interest if they do trade the pick of going anywhere past the Giants pick of three. So it seems like they're locked in on them. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, man, it's so interesting because you hear such a mix. Like, you hear, like, our guy Dan Duggan, some of the guys from Over the Cap are like, no, like, I don't think this is gonna be cheap. Like, I think this is gonna be an expensive move. And then you hear guys like Dane Brugler and others who are going like, no, I think, like, day two day two picks can get it done this year. Ultimately, I think they're both kind of right. You know, it's going to be come down to how these GMs play their card, because I think there's a wide range there. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, if the Titans decide they want to draft Cam Ward, which is possible, they're bringing him in, they might fall in love with him when they bring him. They're not moving off that pick. Like,
Right.
yes, maybe they will move off of it for a ransom, but
Which
like,
they're not getting from the Giants.
yes. So realistically, they're not moving off that pick in that case. And if they're not taking Cam Ward, then they're shopping that pick. And I think you can read if Joe Shane's smart, he reads into that. He looks into it. Okay, these guys are actively shopping this pick. I don't think they're going quarterback here. And if you like both quarterbacks, you can just sit there and call their bluff. If you only like one, you better damn make them sure they believe that you like both quarterbacks and that you're happy sitting. And if you like both of them, but you like one more than the other, you try to make a move up that makes sense. But it's going to be interesting to see how the Giants play this. I think step one is getting a veteran quarterback in here, because I do think they want to do that anyway. I do think it's good for developing a rookie quarterback, but I think most importantly, it gets kind of that stench off you. The desperation stench is potent right now, and getting a veteran quarterback who is probably going to start week one regardless of what you do in the draft is going to help with that.
Yeah. And this is where there's sort of an interplay, right? One affects the other affects the other one as well. So I can see Joe Shane wanting to see if he can, I don't know what his priority is here, but let's just say he really values just one quarterback in this class. For argument's sake, let's say it's Shador Sanders, or actually, let's say it's Cam Ward. Everybody seems to think he's going to be the first quarterback off the board. So, for
Mhm.
argument's sake, let's say he really wants to secure him, and he's very afraid that if he doesn't make the trade, that Shador is not going to get past Cleveland at 2, even if Tennessee takes Abdul Carter or somebody at 1. You know, he probably doesn't want to commit a lot of money to an expensive free agent that he's going to have a hard time benching midway through the season if he's planning on trading for that first overall pick, which means maybe you don't really want to pay an Aaron Rodgers, right?
Mhm.
Maybe you don't want to pay a Russell Wilson. Or conversely, if he feels that the quarterbacks are good, but none of them are necessarily worth a gigantic haul of picks, and he's comfortable with maybe not one, maybe not two, maybe 3 or 4 guys in this class, right? As guys to sit behind a vet, and his priority is the vet. He may be trying to just trying to get the trade done for something cheap on his terms, fully comfortable knowing that he's willing to hand over a big contract to Aaron Rodgers, right? Or to Russell Wilson. And when I say big contract, I mean like in the 20 to $30 million range, or heck, maybe even a guy like Sam Darnold. I mean, they're rumored to have interest in Darnold, and I don't think
Mhm.
Darnold would say no to a big contract. I think all this stuff about, oh, he doesn't want to come back to New York, I think that's overblown. The guy's trying to get paid. So I'm not sure which way they're looking at this. It really depends on how they value these kids versus how they value the veterans on the market. One thing is for certain, they're not comparing it to anything that's in their own roster, because they don't have anybody on their roster other than Tommy DeVito, who they just re-signed. They have nothing to compare to internally. So this is going to be basically how they view these kids versus, the value of saving those draft picks and maybe paying a veteran. It's fascinating to see how this is going to shake out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, man. And, does something happen this weekend? I doubt it, but I think it's possible. I mean, you have free agency coming up. That's kind of a timeline where, the Giants are going to make a move here. If they go and get a guy like Sam Darnold, that kind of takes the Giants out of the trade up for the number one. It might even take them out of like a quarterback at 3. It's kind of hard to imagine it. And that's a risk the Titans take by not going there. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the Titans went and brought in Cam Ward, Shador Sanders, and Travis Hunter this week. I don't think that's a coincidence. Or it was Abdul Carter. Either way, um, I think that they wanted to get an early read on this, and they want to know what they want to do and if they want to draft a quarterback. And I know they don't want to rush that decision, but I do think they're trying to make a prompt decision and not let this drag on any longer than it needs to.
Well, and the legal tampering period officially begins on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot what time Monday. I forgot if it's at noon or 8 a.m. I can't remember exactly, but
Something, I think it's like noon or something like that, one
yeah.
o'clock, something
And
like that.
for those who don't remember, like that's the beginning of the quote legal tampering period. But the second the clock hits 12, a bunch of guys signed are reported to have signed contracts.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
all been worked out at the combine.
yeah. So like these things are settled already, right? So the idea is you have to believe that Joe Shane already has contracts in place for one, if not multiple veteran quarterbacks. And he's talked to their agents and has probably told them, like, look, if there really is a question of him trying to get the first overall pick, he might just be saying to them, if I can get a deal done by, 11 something a.m. on Monday, then, I'll let you know. But otherwise, or maybe it's going to be before then, maybe the deadline's earlier. But if not, I'm handing this contract to your client and I want to know if he's signing it. So I think things are going to move really fast. And I agree with you. I think if a trade's going to happen, it's going to happen like in the next 3 days.
Yeah.
Um,
Otherwise, it's
and
going to take a little bit, I think.
And to be honest, for the Titans, it's in their best interest also to get this trade done because if they're not enamored with a quarterback and they want to trade the pick, that means that by definition, by default, they are going to have to rely on a veteran. And they're going to want to make this trade before they have to show their hand and play their cards by going ahead and signing a veteran. Because the second they sign a veteran, all their leverage is largely gone. So yeah, I'm not really sure like who blinks first. To me, this is just a game of chicken between Joe Shane and Bargonzi, and Bargonzi honestly has the advantage. He's a first time GM. He's been a GM just for like a month or so. I don't know what his poker skills are right now, but he's definitely under no significant pressure to cave here. And Joe Shane is under a lot of pressure to get something done. So if I had to guess, the guy who would blink here would be Shane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree with you. He's desperate, and that's a scary place to be as Giants fans with your GM and something we warned against. But here we are, and they feel the need to go and get a quarterback, and that's understandable. We're gonna see how this plays out. I think one proposal that's been getting thrown around has been interesting. You don't know if it's real or fake, but essentially the idea of us setting Kayvon for Harold Landry and then on top of a couple day two picks, I think it's really interesting if you're the Titans, especially if you think Travis Hunter is going to be there at 3, because suddenly you're looking at, instead of taking Abdul Carter number 1, you're getting a former 5th overall pick, young edge rusher who has upside still. Like, he hasn't lived up to what he has, but he still has a lot of upside. He's a good young player, has had double-digit sacks already in his career. And you are also being able to go get a guy like Travis Hunter. So you're kind of filling 2 holes there, really getting a head start on, building that young nucleus in Tennessee. I think that's, you do that. The Tennessee GM has, or I guess it's their vice president or whatever, Brinker, has talked about how the next 3 years he wants 30 picks and 12 top 100 picks. You're getting a good start on that by making a trade for the Giants. Maybe even try to get us to throw in like another 5th or something like that to help get you on track pick wise. But I think it does make some sense for a move like that. We'll see though.
Yeah. And don't forget, when it comes to a decision like this, when you're talking about not only using a top 5 pick, but potentially a top 1 pick on a quarterback, and you're talking about trading assets for it, this is not really a Joe Shane decision. He's doing the maneuvering, but this is an ownership decision. Like at the end of the day, whatever the Giants do with this pick, it's going to come down to what John Mara's okay with. Like he's not going to okay a trade up for them to get a young quarterback if he doesn't want that quarterback, or
Mm-hmm.
if he doesn't want to part with the future assets, if he's not sure about their future. And he's put them in this weird spot. But like I think it's pretty logical to think that the money they might spend on a veteran is more on the Joe Shane, Brian Dable side of things. But the decision here to on what to do to get a young quarterback, this is firmly in the John Mara camp. Like there is no decision being made at all here without Mara giving them a firm thumbs up on it. So, it's curious to see how this shakes out. Keep that in mind as things progress. But it's going to come to a head, I think, in the next few days. I'd be surprised if we're sitting here on Monday or Tuesday and wondering, are they going to still make this trade? I'd be surprised. I think at that point, if the trade hasn't been done, I think then the Giants will probably move on and get themselves a veteran and just stick at pick three, most likely, unless Tennessee comes calling back. But I think the price will probably diminish for the pick at that point. And let me tell you something. And I'm in the camp of make Tennessee wait. I don't believe they want to take a quarterback. I don't think you do all this if you want to take a quarterback. If you want the quarterback, you don't even bother unless you give somebody you know the ultimatum of, hey, if you want the pick, you hand me your organization's more future for the next few years. If you give me the
Yeah,
king's ransom, otherwise I'm not interested in trading the pick. If they're interested in actually making a reasonable deal here, they don't want to take a quarterback. That's
yeah.
kind of the way it is.
I don't get the feel that this is the New England Patriots from last year. And, and maybe it is, but like, I don't know. We'll get a better feel for that over the next couple weeks. If they actually want to trade that pick, there's going to be a lot of heat. The Patriots is like, they might be open to it. Like, Titans have more been like, they want to move. So we'll see.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So we'll see how that goes. There's not much else to say at this time. It's going to shake out in the next few days. We'll probably have stuff to talk about this time next week. Um, Hello to everybody in the chat. Thank you for joining us. But before we go into like some of the combine stuff, let's go into these two prospects. So we reviewed a couple of guys who I think they're actually kind of the two of the more fun guys I had a chance to review this year. Two offensive tackle prospects. One who I think is probably going to end up going at this point. He might be the first offensive lineman off the board on
Mm-hmm.
draft night.
Yeah.
Um, and the other guy who's more of a day two guy, but an intriguing player that I think, in the right system, in the right environment, could really be a super high swing for
Yeah.
somebody.
Agreed.
So why don't we get started? Do you want to go over the first guy? We want to get us started with the first guy, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Yeah, I can do that. So let me go ahead and share the screen. I think a lot of you have probably heard a lot about this guy recently, especially at the combine, and that's Armand Membou from Missouri. He's becoming the offensive tackle one in a lot of people's minds, and I think after watching him, I really do understand why. This was not a guy who made our original top five. We did our offensive tackle review very early on to the season. And, as you can see by that big board, he had, or by these stats here, he had a really big jump here in 2024. 67.1 PFF grade in 2023, all the way up to a 90.6 this year. Allowed 0 sacks, 0 QB hits, and only 8 pressures on the year. Very, very impressive season by this man. I went ahead and watched a couple of games. One of those against that incredible Texas A&M defensive line, and that is not an easy defensive line to handle. And I'd be lying to you if I was saying that Membou didn't have his issues there, but overall, I was very impressed with what I saw. I saw a guy who had a lot of strength and had really good anchor. You saw a guy like Shamar Stewart, who just blew up the combine, who
Mhm.
came in with a lot of speed and a lot of strength and was trying to bull rush Membou, and he just sat and just took that power and was able to anchor down. Really impressive to watch in the run game. He's a guy that generates movement. He really uses strength and his athleticism. He creates lanes for the ball carrier. Speaking of his athleticism, I don't know if you noticed the Sal. I mean, it's probably hard to miss. I'm sure you did. How often they were using Membou as a tight end. They would take him,
Yep.
like, this would happen probably 10 times a game.
Move him to the left side. Yeah.
Yeah, they
Have the
would
jumbo
take a
tight end.
they
Yeah.
would bring somebody in to play his position at right tackle. They would move him to jumbo tight end to the left side, and they'd run the ball behind him. And everybody knows they're running it that way at this point. And he just would block 1, 2, 3 people at times and just absolutely dominate from there. Really, really good in space, and really got to display that there. And The last thing I really had here for a pro is I thought he had really good grip strength. He was a guy that kind of latch on defenders and could control them. Something that you can see in these high end tackles. Now, something he definitely has. Uh, from con side, I thought he did have some issues in pass protection, mostly oversetting. I would see him overset and get beat inside. It was never really too bad. He had the athleticism to recover, and he would, he kind of would wash the guy, but the guy would definitely influence the play when that would happen. It's just he wouldn't get a clean shot in the quarterback. And then I did see him lunge at times. Which I don't think he needs to do. He did a lot, I think, in pass pro, and I think it was ready to kind of like take on those bull rushes. But he has so much strength that I don't think he needs to lunge the way he does. I really didn't see any balance issues, but that can come with the lunging. It's something you have to worry about when you do that. That can lead to balance issues in the NFL. So, but overall, really, really impressive guy. Weighing 332 pounds at the combine, 6'4", 33.5-inch arms, really good size, really good athleticism. What do you think of him, Sal?
I think that this is a guy that I didn't see a lot of weaknesses in his game. When you're watching these O linemen, you often see them get exposed for the things they don't do well, right? Like especially at the higher levels, like the SEC, you'll see edge rushers take advantage of whatever their weaknesses are, and you'll see it over and over and over on the tape. I think you mentioned the one thing he struggles with, which is sometimes oversetting and overstriding against wide rushers, and I think that's mainly to compensate for what I think is maybe a little bit of a he's on the lower end of the arm length
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know, percentiles. I forget where he is, but not
He's
the greatest.
33 and a half, which is on the lower end of what works, basically.
I'm guessing that's in like the 25th percentile or something
I
like that for
I
offensive
can get it
tackles.
for you, but
Probably lower, but yeah, I think there is a little bit of that compensatory movement in his game where he knows that he doesn't want to get beat with these like edge rushers who are really lengthy and are long limbed to get around him. And that does leave him prone to that counter move to the inside where guys will just cross his face. That was the one area where I saw him maybe struggle a little. And to be honest, the only guy I saw do that to him consistent, well, not even consistently, but a few times was Nick Scourton. I mean,
yeah,
Nick
he
Scourton
was
might be
always.
yeah, Nick Scourton might be a first round pick, edge
Mhm.
rusher out of A&M, and he I think consistently on plays tried to that move, and he was successful a few times where he was able to to show that he was going to take a wide rush and then just change angles and come and cross his face to the inside and go right past him. But in the same game, like you mentioned, he faced another guy who was going to be a first round pick, who's going to probably go higher than Scourton, even though I think Scourton's a better football player.
Okay.
But Shamar Stewart is, he's the Trevon Walker of this class, right?
Yeah, we'll
He's the
talk
guy.
about him tonight.
Yeah, we'll get to him, but Shamar Stewart is a testing freak, and he gets a lot of pressures mainly just by bull rushing. He's a
Hmm.
powerful guy, um, but he dominates with his strength. And I mean, I think you saw it too. He was completely dominated by Membou. Like he tried
Hmm.
bull rushing him over and over again, and he got nowhere. He got no push, nothing. And that's a testament to how strong this guy is. Because if there's one thing Stewart's good at is pushing that tackle backwards, and he got no leverage, no ground on Membou. So the one minor thing I think you pointed out nicely, other than that, really good football player all around. I mean, I didn't see any real problems with this game. I do think people are going to dissect his arm length, and there's going to be questions about whether or not he can sustain it tackle. But I think he can. I think he has the movement skills and the athleticism to do that. Um, and he's just so strong that he dominates. But worst case scenario, and I mean absolute worst case scenario, if he just can't handle the speed and the bend around the edges of longer limbed NFL edge rushers, you move this guy inside. You're probably looking at a dominant, like all pro level guard
Yeah.
So and you mentioned why with his prowess in the run game. Um, but yeah, I mean that was it. I mean it was like the most minor of minor criticisms, and I think that's something that he generally will not struggle with. When especially with some more time in coaching.
Yeah, and he does have a type of body that I think could work at guard. And, we're going to talk about some other guys who didn't measure at the longest arm, but I thought Membou's arm length, ended up measuring pretty good. I was happy. You were actually spot on though. It was 26th percentile.
Right.
But we talked about how arm length actually had a negative correlation to success.
Yes, it
I
did.
I do believe in where I'm like minimum, like a minimum level arm length. I do believe in that. But once you kind of get the threshold, I feel right. And he hit the threshold for me, so I'm happy. I do think he's a successful tackle, and I think right now he is my tackle one in this class. But do you want to go into these grades?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right,
So
hold on.
I think I want to go back. I think he graded out as our best tackle of the class.
Yeah, he's tied for my best, and he is your best. So
Yeah.
yes.
Right. So just a refresher here. The six categories we're actually only incorporating six categories here for the overall score, although we have nine. Those six are size and length, footwork, strength, technique, leverage, and athleticism. And then we have three categories that are not going to go into the overall grade, which is football IQ, Giants grade, Goon grade. So let's start with size and length. You gave him a four. I gave him a three here, and I think I, I think I know what you're going to say about the size part. He's got a very good body type. He's balanced. He's not like high cut, low cut. He's perfectly balanced and he's very strong. I gave him a three here only because that arm length is on the lower percentile, and I do think that matters at the NFL level.
Yeah, I mean, he's a big boy, man. 6'4", 332 pounds. And the arm length ultimately didn't bother me. It was long enough that it wasn't enough to knock him down. But it wasn't long enough for me to knock him up to 5 either. Because, if he has long arms at that size, I could have given him a 5.
Yep. Footwork. I think we both agreed this is an above average NFL level footwork player. Really good when you watch him. Smooth with his feet, can move laterally, move inside, gets into space very easily. We both gave him a four there, and you already discussed the things you liked about him. You mentioned the strength. We both gave him a four. He's a strong guy. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned the Shamar Stewart reps. He just dominates him. He's a four. Technique. You gave him a three. I gave him a four here. I liked his technique. Is there a reason you didn't think he was above average there?
Yeah, I thought he could be sometimes a little bit sloppy moving to the second level. I thought he could be a little bit sloppy with his pass sets where he would, let those guys get inside. I think he could clean up at times. But I think it was bad. It's kind of average to me.
Okay. Leverage. You gave him a three. I gave him a four here. I thought he was I thought he was solid with his leverage. I didn't see a lot of balance issues with him, and I thought he held up against different types of attacks.
Yeah,
What
that's
did you
fair.
see anything different?
No, I think that's fair. I think if I was gonna, the two that we separated on, if I was gonna knock one of them up, it'd probably be leverage. I was close there.
Yep. Athleticism, we both gave him a five. I mean, he this guy's a supreme athlete, and I want to get into that in a second.
Yeah,
Um, because we
and
have combine results to share.
yeah, and we'll get into the second. I will say, like, he's a really good athlete, and on tape, he's at least a 4. But man, we're gonna get into it. And now we have the combine results. It's hard not to, all right. Like I saw it, he's a good athlete, but damn, is he a good athlete? Like,
Uh, yeah. And then we both gave him a three for IQ. You gave him a Giants grade of five. I love it. I gave him a four. Gave him a four on the Goon grade. Let's go to the athleticism thing real quick. But the final score, you got him at 383. I have him at a 4.0, which is definitely my highest tackle score. Um, so let's get into the RAS score here. And there were two things I want to point out. So his overall RAS score was a 9.82. So that's elite for those who follow the Ken Lee Platt's math bomb stuff, which is fun to look at during the combine season. And remember, not everything matters, but when you see scores like this, the only thing that's in the red for him is his height at 6'4". Um, that's considered undersized for a tackle, but height only matters if you have issues with wingspan and length. His wingspan is good. His length is okay. His weight, like you said, 332 at 6'4". He's a big kid, and he doesn't carry it like a big fat boy. Like he's a big strong dude. 33 and a half inch arms. But look at these testing numbers, Monty. Look at the explosive. testing. At 6'4", 332, the guy jumped a 34-inch vertical. Okay,
Insane.
that it's bananas. He had a 9 foot 7 inch broad jump think about that, 9 feet 7 inch broad jump at 6'4", 332. That's a lot of human being moving that in an explosive way across the field.
Hmm.
And then look at his and this is the stuff that I want you to talk about to remind everybody why this matters. But his testing on his runs, a 4.91 40 with a 2.85 20-yard split and a 1.74 10-yard split, all elite. Tell the good people of our show why that matters.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it's simple as, big guys who run well translate, guys who are big guys and athletes. And in an ideal world, I think you'd want to use a 10-yard split. But I think the tough thing with linemen is linemen aren't track runners. To be able to compare their 10-yard splits, it's kind of like your get off and stuff like that. So I do think there's something to the 40 yards being decent numbers. And when I went over it in a different episode. I put it up on my Twitter. I'll retweet it from her. He's a Giant episode, but essentially, there's been 22 guys who have run a 4.89 or better. So we just missed that mark, and 11 of those are all pro to Hall of Fame type players. Absolute crazy hit rate on success there. And yet no, he didn't hit that number. Granted, there's not many people after that at 4.9. There's, let's see, going to 4.9, Desmond Harrison, Brady Christensen, Gabe Hall, Rashawn Slater, Chris Lindstrom. I would say going to 4.91 is probably not terrible with Chris Lindstrom and Rashawn Slater helping to even that out, and Danny Pinter. And I'll also say, not a lot of these guys are as big as Armand Membou is doing this at 332 pounds. So, that is a very impressive number. And then going back, and he led the combine with 31 bench presses. This guy all around absolutely dominated it.
And that to me is a great comp right there. So that was my comp for him. I know your comp is very different. My comp for
Mhm.
Membu is actually Rashawn Slater. And I think there's a lot there that's similar. Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern, if you guys remember, now he's on the Chargers. He's their left tackle, one of the better tackles in the NFL. When he was coming out of school, this is a guy who played every position. I think every position except for center, if I recall. When he came out in the 21 draft, and he was good everywhere. And the talk about him pre-draft was, is he going to stick a tackle because of his arm length? Because he had uh I forget what his arm length was. It was right around 33-inch arms or something like that, 33.5-inch arms. He was also 6'4". He was 304 pounds. He wasn't 330. But his numbers were similar. He had a 33-inch vertical and 9 foot 4 inch broad jump, and he ran exactly a 4.91 40, and very similar times to Membu here. I see a lot of Rashawn Slater in this guy, and and I think that like Slater, you're seeing Membu moved around a little bit on the line. He could probably function
Mhm.
on the left, on the right. He can function as a guard. This is probably the most valuable offensive line prospect in this class when you put it all together.
Agreed. Yeah. And, my comp for him was, he reminded me a little bit of Tristan Wirfs coming out of college. He's a guy who's a big, athletic, strong guy. And, some of what reminds me of was, some of the weaknesses too. A guy who they looked at, maybe he has to slide into guard. Then he comes out and he tests crazy. Maybe he doesn't have to move inside the guard. Not incredibly short arms, but not long. And then I think another thing, a big complaint with Tristan Wirfs was he would overset and get beat outside. And again, he was the guy who had the athleticism to not let that kill him. But it was an issue for his and something he had to work on in the NFL. So I do see a little bit of Tristan Wirfs too, Membo.
All right.
What?
So that is Membu. Let's go on to our next guy. And to be fair, the Giants aren't getting Membu unless something insane happens, right? Unless they sign Sam Darnold and decide we're trading down or something like right? Like they've got to do something crazy on draft night where they're like, we're not trading up, we're trading down, and we're sliding down like 4 picks or 5 picks or whatever, and we're gonna or maybe even less, and we're gonna pick up some draft assets. And you know what? Best player on the board is Armand Membou. We're taking him. That's the only way I see the Giants taking Membou.
Yeah,
Um,
like he's a fantastic fit for being the right tackle, being the big dominator. But yeah, I don't see it happening. What before we move on, one thing I want to happen because I don't know, maybe some people haven't always been here who didn't explain it in a while. I just wanted to go over our scoring again real quick because I saw some questions in the chat with it. Just for reference, when we do that 1 through 5, basically the reason we did that was because we didn't want to try. We wanted to try to avoid assigning the numbers arbitrarily. So we added a number for each one. Essentially, just going over it. One, we're giving you that. We're saying you're like a practice squad out of the NFL type at that position. Two, or at that trait. Two, we're saying you are a below average to backup player at with that trait. Three, we're calling you an NFL starter, an average NFL player at that trait. Four, we're calling you an above average, like Pro Bowl level player. And then five is like a true all pro elite, like at trait. So that's basically why we did it. Sometimes it can get hard, and I don't disagree with like the 1 through 10 gives you a little bit more wiggle room when you're on the can't lean, but kind of holds us accountable to putting a guy in a bucket for each one. So that's just for clarity. That's what it is and why we did it.
yep. And I failed to mention one thing here. And I should mention that before we go further. Membu put up 31 reps on the bench, which was the top among tackles when he tested. And if you guys remember from our last episode, the factor, if you use WAR, wins above replacement, value, the the factor, according to PFF at least, that predicted NFL success more than any other factor for offensive tackles was their bench press number. It was by far the most impactful, and the next most impactful was the 40 time, which makes sense with what you mentioned with the research you've done. And so Membu has an elite bench and an elite 40 time, and you see it on the tape. So something to keep in mind. But I think no doubt in my mind, he's looking like he's pushed himself all the way to O lineman number one in this class. So again, if the Giants came away with him, I think it means that we traded down. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, dude, I want a quarterback, but like if they found a solution somehow that was satisfactory, and they decided, hey, we're gonna, or they just couldn't get the quarterbacks. Let's just say that you know the quarterbacks go 1 and 2, right? Let's say, Cam goes off the board at 1 and Shador goes off at 2, and they don't want to stick at 3. And they're like, let's get some draft capital here. And they trade down. I wouldn't be upset if the guy we walked away from Thursday night with was Armand Membu. I would not be upset about that at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it should be interesting. And yeah, I'm a big fan of his. We'll see. He's like I don't know if I have him as like a blue chipper yet, but he's right there.
He's up there. Yeah. And
Yeah.
when we'll eventually do our full list, but he's pushing that level. All right,
Yep.
let's go to the second guy we are going to go over. Just give me a second here and I'm going to load up his stuff. But it's a guy that should be available a little bit later in the draft. And you've heard us talk about him before on this show very early in the season, actually in our Feldman Freak List episode. And it is no other than Charles Grant, offensive tackle from William and Mary, 6'4.5", 301 pounds. He actually weighed in at about 311, I want to say, at the combine. Um, he came in as an unranked zero-star recruit. He's a bright kid. I'm from Virginia. I live in Virginia. I know to get into William and Mary is not easy. It's a good school. So he's a very bright kid. He goes in there um, and he decides to play. He did eventually get offers to transfer to bigger schools like Virginia Tech, UVA. Said no, I'm going to stick it out at William and Mary. He's actually interviewed about that and talked about his coach, his offensive line coach, and why he stayed there. So he's a very thoughtful kid. Before we get into his performance, some of his grades, I mean, he really he's put on a show over the years. Last year, he had a 76.4 overall grade, and Feldman put him on his freak list for a lot of reasons. I'll get into that in a second. But his grade this year shot up to 91.2 overall. He had a 90.4 run blocking grade, 88.1 pass blocking grade, a 93 zone grade. Keep that in mind because we'll get into that. a
Yeah.
67.6 gap grade, and a 78.4 true pass set grade. He played 751 snaps all at left tackle this year. And he's only played left tackle the last 3 years, every snap, and he's had 800 snaps the last 3 years. He gave up a total of 9 pressures this year, 6 hurries, 1 hit, and 2 sacks. So not quite as good as Membu, but pretty solid for the 12-game season. Um, Grant is a freak. So he was number 42 on Feldman's freak list to begin the season. Monty, this guy at his size, 6'4", he plays at around 290 to 300. He ran 21 miles per hour on the GPS. For those who remember that episode, a
Hmm.
guy hit 21. That's like Saquon Barkley speed at 300 and 300-ish pounds. He had a 1.44 laser time 10-yard split. That's a real 10-yard split. That is not a hand timer. That's a laser time. 144 is like crazy elite. That's 100 percentile. I think that's the best ever for offensive linemen, if that's real. And 99% overall for all players. Forget offensive linemen. He had this is before the season, 32-inch vertical jump. We don't know where he's going to land because he didn't do that at the combine, I don't believe. And at 35, measured in at 35-inch
Yeah.
arms.
He only benched. He's going to do
Yep.
the rest of his pro day.
Yep. I forgot, what did he put up? What did he put up? 30, 32 reps? What?
19.
Oh, he put up 19?
He's got
What
long
happened with
arms
him?
though.
Oh, okay. All right. So here's the pros. Um, when you watch him, that speed shows up. The guy's an elite athlete playing offensive tackle. His movement skills are as good as anybody I've seen at the position in college. I mean that. Like I don't think I've seen tackles move like this guy before. His feet are so quick, and he gets into space so fast and covers so much ground as a tackle that you see him, and you mentioned this, that sometimes he gets to the point of attack before the guy who's supposed to block gets there, and he misses the block just because he's got there too fast. He's that quick. But essentially, he's a movement tackle. He gets out there and he is just plowing guys way down the field laterally. He's outstanding in zone blocking. Again, we'll get to that a little bit more. He's strong. He's a very strong guy. At 6'4", 300 pounds, let's say. He plays a lot stronger than that. He looks like he's got about 320, 330 in mass, and he does not get beaten over with power rushes easily. He engages, he sustains blocks. Um, Now, I think he's going to be a great pass protector. We both believe that. I think William and Mary, the games we were able to get access to and see, they didn't use him in true vertical sets very often. I think they used
Yeah.
him more as like a move tackle.
Yeah,
Um,
a lot of jump shot sets, short step sets,
right.
and stuff like that.
But the profile, the physical profile, the athleticism, the body type, I think we both feel like if you just put him in those positions, he'll do fine. He'll do very well. Um, Now, here's the bad stuff. Like, I think sometimes I think this is from reps and the way they used him. He's not super quick getting into pass protection stance. Sometimes speed edge rushers, you can see potentially getting to him.
Hmm.
Um, the angles can be a little bit poor, and sometimes, as you mentioned, that's just him just going too quickly into a spot. And again, the speed rusher issue, you got to see it more. He may struggle against these guys coming across the edge. You have to see if he's able to use the foot speed in true pass sets. I mean, there's a lot to know about him, and we just don't know with his reps at William and Mary. But obviously, we're not talking about a guy who's going to grade out as like a first round tackle. But we talk about this about with a lot of players, man. If they're not perfect prospects, do they have an elite trait that you can work with? And if they do, are they worth taking? He is an elite athlete. I mean, and as elite as an elite athlete gets playing
Yeah,
the tackle position.
as elite as I've ever seen at the tackle position.
Right. If you haven't seen him, it's a treat to watch him move around the field. Um, that's his gift. That's his superpower. His upside is incredible as an athlete in a very specific system. And I think that system is in a zone blocking system, especially specifically wide zone, right?
Yeah.
Like this is like Kyle Shanahan's wet dream right here, right? This guy, I mean, or McVay's wet dream. Like guys like this who can move in wide zone are just monsters because they're just they're weapons in the run game. And I think a guy like him, under the right tutelage and the right system, could become a Pro Bowl type tackle at the NFL level. He's that gifted. There's a
Yes.
lot to work with tools wise here. So Is he inconsistent? Does he need reps? Does he need reps at a higher level? Of course, he played at William and Mary's at an FCS school. There's a lot to project here. And the way they used him was not the traditional way you would expect a tackle to develop before he goes into the draft. But this guy's being, he's being viewed as somewhere between a top 70 to top 50 pick, and the reason for that is that elite athleticism. So it's a guy to keep an eye on. And this is a guy I mean, barring that situation I played out before with Membou, where the Giants have to trade down to get him, this is a guy that I can see the Giants, like, he could fall to you at K-Mac put him at 65. Yeah,
Mhm.
I can see Grant being there at 65, and the Giants thinking we need a developmental tackle with elite upside, and we're going to take this guy. The only catch there is if we do that, I want to make sure that these guys are all fired at the end of the year.
Yeah.
We bring in a Shanahan McVay guy to come in here and run a zone offense. But really a fascinating prospect. So what did you think of him?
Yeah, man. I mean, the biggest thing you talk about is the athleticism. When you watch him, that athleticism stand out. This is the type of man who could start at tackle and could reach and block like a nose guard in a zone blocking scheme. Like the way that he can move and get to his assignment and reach them is so insanely impressive, to the point he is almost too athletic and doesn't quite understand how to set his angles for his speed, and he'll just outrun these guys and fuck up like his block trying to come back and get them. Like this guy truly, like I mentioned with like Membou, I don't know if I would have gave him a 5 if not for the testing. It would have been close. I have not seen any testing. I don't need to hear about Feldman's freak list. I don't need any of that. This is the clearest 5 I have ever seen at the offensive line position. He is so athletic. It is insanely athletic. It's not always the easiest thing to see on the offensive line, but he is that good of an athlete. He does show good strength, as you mentioned, and I do think if he gets to use more vertical sets, I do think he could really utilize his athleticism, and he could be I think his tape as a pass catcher looked better. Yeah, you mentioned it. I think he's kind of a raw player still a little bit though. Like I thought he was a little bit slow in his pass sets. Part of that was the scheme, but I also just didn't think that him moving backwards was always as fast as him moving forward. Get better angles, get a little bit better footwork, get a little bit better with just his IQ at the offensive tackle position. But the upside is incredible for this guy. I didn't, he's definitely not a finished product, but man, he can do things for your offensive line that not many humans on earth can do for you. So he's going to be very attractive to teams.
Yeah. And I think that's the bottom line. This is a true developmental tackle, but if you hit on this guy, you're talking about like a Pro Bowl all pro caliber type player. That's when you have that kind of elite trait, especially in the athleticism department, there's a lot to work with there. Just you need the right scheme, the right coaching. I don't think he's for every team and he's not for every system, certainly, but I think he's definitely worth like a swing in the third round. I would happily hand in the card for him. I just don't think he fits what the Giants currently do. They don't block like this. They don't move like this. And they don't seem to value these kinds of guys. So I have a hard time believing that the current regime is gonna use a pick on him. But I would, if I were drafting independent of the current guys, knowing that, odds are not great that they're survivors here in the long run, I would be very happy to take this guy. But let's get into the scores, and see how he graded out for our scoring system. So,
Yep.
size and length, I think we both gave him a 4 here. He's got above average size, and as I mentioned, 35-inch arms, monstrous wingspan, over 80 inches.
Yeah, he has a length. He's just not super heavy, so it's close. He's just not a 5. He's very good
Yeah,
though.
yeah. Footwork, we both gave him a 3. It could have been higher, but like you say, he's a little raw there. He has the upside
Yeah,
to go a lot higher there.
yeah, it's definitely the upside to move up, but I don't like his footwork and pass protection all that much, but they don't really ask him to do that much.
Yeah. A good question from Alex in the chat. feeds into the strength. Is he strong enough to play in the NFL? Yeah, I think we both gave him a three. He plays plenty strong with more upside because his frame is such where his core strength is ridiculous. And
Hmm.
his bench numbers, the 19 is a little surprising to me, but maybe he just wore out with his long arms, but he has benched over 30 times before. So maybe that's just like the inconsistency of a guy with long arms like that. But
Yeah.
when you see him on tape, he's plenty strong. He's just mowing guys over.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's obviously worth mentioning the competition William and Mary had. He's obviously more physical, dominating these people. So it's hard to say for sure, but I never saw on tape strength being an issue for him. I'll put it that way.
not one rep where he looks like he got physically beat. You
Yeah.
know, technique. You gave him a two. That's probably fair. I gave him a three because I just like the guy, but I think a two is probably pretty fair. He has a lot to learn. I think
Yeah.
he's had good coaching to work to teach up the things he does well, but he's going to need NFL coaching to
Yeah.
develop a lot of aspects, like you mentioned.
I think a good
Um,
example of it is even the thing that he does great with those zone blocking schemes. He can even still find himself, messing up those angles and
it's
outrunning a guy. And
that's definitely a coaching and timing thing, like
mhm,
teaching the guy to like rein it in a little bit and
mhm,
and know how to time his hits and his getting to a spot because he's so quick. He doesn't have to worry about going max speed to get to a spot, right? He can just get there easily. Leverage, I think he's solid. I didn't see anything wrong with his leverage. He's
yeah.
able to always hold at the point of attack. Didn't think he was a lead or anything, but we both gave him a three. I think average at the NFL level. Athleticism is where he shines. We both gave him a five. This is probably the best athlete I've seen play the offensive line in college in a while.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I usually you see these guys on the other side of the ball, which is what's made playing the offensive line such a difficult task because people on these other side of the football are becoming more and more athletic by the year, and it's getting so hard for these guys to keep up with them athletically. Finally, the offensive line got one of these guys.
Yep. You gave him a two for IQ. I can see why. I think he needs work. I gave him a
Yeah.
three. I thought for what he was asked to do, he did very well.
Mhm.
But didn't see anything too special. But I think he's fine. I don't view it as a big negative at the NFL level. You gave him a four for Giants grade. I gave him a three. And that's mainly because I feel like, in our current regime, I don't know how they would use him well.
I knock it back to a three. Also, just because I don't trust us to develop anybody anymore.
Yeah, and we both gave him a goon grade at three. He's from William and Mary. He's too smart to be a goon higher than that. I didn't
Yeah.
see it. So overall, I gave him a 3.5, which is solid. You gave him a 3.33. But I think you see where this is going. We think he's at least an average NFL prospect and maybe slightly above average. But this one is like a 3.3, 3.5 with the potential to push into the fours with the right development. If you're gonna swing
Yeah.
on somebody, I think this is the guy to swing on day two.
But he's got enough low traits there that if he can't, that those could derail him if he doesn't improve there. So he's got to get the right coaching and he's got to improve in the NFL.
But let's talk about this for a second from a draft perspective. Take the Joe Shane and Brian Dable element out of it for a moment. Just look at the Giants roster. You have Andrew Thomas. He has had injuries, but he's an all-pro tackle when he's on the field. But he's had injuries, so there's
Mm-hmm.
that in the back of your mind. You've got Jermaine Illuminor, who personally I hope they extend. Um,
I agree.
that should be a priority this offseason in my mind is to extend Illumina for at least a couple more years. I think when you find a starting tackle who can play guard like that in the NFL, you shouldn't let him out of your building. And he seems to like it here. He certainly likes being on Twitter here. So,
Mhm.
he seems like a good guy. He seems to enjoy being here and a good teammate. I would extend Illuminor. So you have two of your tackle positions covered. Now, I say there are only two tackle spots, but you need a swing tackle. You really need two backup tackles in the NFL. You need guys with versatility. The way we profile this guy Grant, I mean, there are people who are going to say his size is more suited to play guard at 6'4", 300 pounds, um, and that he could be a dominant guard. I don't know if that's the right way to use him or not, but I can see him being a decent fit for a team that wants to develop a tackle, but that has the ability, the play strength, and the athleticism to be a guard as well. Hell, I could see this guy playing center. Like I can see the athleticism there. Like, can you imagine a guy like him being able to move as at center and be like a dominant force? There's a lot of value in a guy like this, so I would take a swing on him. I know he's not the perfect fit for Joe Shane and Brian Dable, but I think given the roster, the way it is structured, and I'm not even mentioning where Evan Neal is because I have no idea what they're doing with that guy. Um, but I would not mind a guy like this because if you can have a guy like this in your room, to develop, and at minimum, he becomes like a rotational piece on your line that's reliable in a pinch. I think that's valuable on day two. And if you hit the upside, you've got a tackle, and you have flexibility at tackle spot. You could eventually trade one of the other guys. Maybe you trade
Mhm.
a guy like Illuminor, or you become make him the swing tackle. Whatever, however you want to do it. It's not a bad thing to have depth, especially at that position. We've seen tackle depth derail Giant seasons over and over and over again. So I'm all for it.
Yeah. No, he's got special traits, man, at the end of the day.
Yeah. Alex brings up another good point, and I love this guy too. And we're going to do a review of him too, I promise. But he says, I think I would prefer Anthony Belton as a developmental tackle, because we saw him against a higher level of competition. I agree, Belton's awesome. I really like Anthony Belton, the kid from NC State. You actually saw him hold. If you watch the offensive line, defensive line drills at the Senior Bowl, those are definitely heavily skewed towards the defensive lineman. Belton was probably, in my mind, when I watched him, I thought he was the best performing offensive tackle out there. And he held up very well. So he is somebody I would take, but I think he's like a true, pure tackle. And there's nothing wrong with that. I would love to grab him. I just think the upside swing on Grant is something I'm very intrigued by, especially when you have some versatility with his positional usage. So he's an interesting prospect, man. I tried comping him, but I couldn't come up with one. I don't know if you could come up with a decent comp.
Yeah. Taron Armstead, maybe small school
Ah,
guy, super athletic.
it's a good one. Yeah.
I didn't really
Armstead,
watch Taron Armstead in
he
college, so I
went he
can't say
went
for
to
sure, but
Arkansas Pine Brook or something like that. Did he come from
something like that.
some small
Yeah.
FCS school? Yeah, I like it. I mean, Armstead's been solid, right? He's for the Dolphins. He's been a good player. So
I think he was an all pro with the Saints. And
he
he and,
was. Yeah.
and he ran a 4.71. That was the
Armstead,
best.
yeah.
That was the best 40-yard dash
I
by an
wonder if
offensive
Grant's gonna.
tackle
I wonder if
ever.
Grant's gonna run at his pro day. I hope he
That
does,
he's
because
supposedly supposed to.
if he cracks that 4.9 mark, I mean, and
I think he
you
will. I really do.
with all the other athletic gifts, and like the one thing being negative being the bench, which matters, but again, you can kind of chalk that up to arm length, especially if he benches again. I'm sure he will at his pro day.
Mhm.
He does better. That's less of a concern. If he runs a sub 4.9 with all the other athletic testing results you have, and what you know about this guy's tape and his athleticism, his stock will probably go up. He might find himself at the back half of the second round, with these kinds of traits. But if he falls to 65, if we still have pick 65, I mean, he would be near the top of my list of guys to consider there.
I'll say I'm excited to see it. I really want to see you run to the 40. I don't expect that 144 laser time. As much as it's a laser time, 144.
That's
Dude,
nuts.
that
That's like wide receiver speed.
the best 10-yard split at the combine this year was a 149.
Was that what's his face from Texas?
It was
Uh
Damian Porter and a
Porter.
Manu Warrior.
Okay. Yeah. Well, he's probably not going to run that, but as long as he runs,
Yeah,
great.
maybe it's like a 10-yard split in like the middle or something.
Maybe the laser came from Michigan. We'll
Yeah.
see. All right. So those are the two guys we want to go over. So I think these are fun guys to review. And I think we'll have to keep going over some of these offensive tackles and offensive linemen in general, because it's high time the Giants started taking positional versatility and depth at the offensive line position more seriously, and I hope they do. This is not a great class for like the high end, but man, like every other position, this is a really good class to get these developmental guys and guys for your roster and take swings on them. So I think guys like this are guys we have to review, and I hope they take a swing on somebody. So that's our two for this week. We're about 58 minutes in. You want to get into some combine stuff?
Yeah, I'm down. Do you want to just go position by position, just kind of talk a little bit about guys that impressed us or let us down in each group?
Absolutely.
All right. Quarterbacks. Nobody worked out. I mean, I think that was a mistake on Jalen
Tyler
Milroe's
Shuck
part.
ran better than everybody.
Yeah, he did. He ran well too.
He,
That was Shuck.
he ran. What did he run, a 4.7 or 4.6? He did
Four
okay.
six something. Let me see. It was
Yeah,
4.63, and Brady Cook ran a 4.59. Some good times for quarterbacks. Yeah, I think it was a mistake of Jalen Milroe not to run. I think that was his chance to kind of build some positive momentum towards his
huge
stock.
mistake.
Yeah.
Huge mistake. I kind of get it. Like, I think he's trying to like send the message like, I am not a running back. Don't make me run, and don't. But like,
Well,
you need
he's
to make a
not a
case.
proven passer.
And,
Like,
and you need to build your resume for the
yeah.
draft. Like the purpose of the combine for a non-guaranteed first round pick is I need to build up my stock and make the case for you to take me. You have elite traits. Put them on display for the world to see and make people think twice before they let you out of the first or second round, It just I think it was whoever advised him to that gave him really bad advice in my mind.
Yeah, and
Because
then Alex Milroe's
yeah.
hands grew, apparently.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so Dan Jeremiah was talking about this. There were some guys whose hand size grew like Milrose, and there were guys whose hand size dropped by an inch. And like from the Senior Bowl. So what's going on here? Like, just you know, good news. The NFL seems to be doing away with the chain gang, right? They'll be there on the sideline, but they're going to use a chip, right,
Mhm.
to measure first downs this year, supposedly, right? That seems to be the rumor. I don't think it's
Mhm.
confirmed yet, but it sounds like that's going
I
to
think that's
happen.
what it said. Yeah.
Yeah, and the chain gang will be there as a backup to not make them unemployed.
Yeah.
So they're there for show. Why can't we have some sort of just standardized measurement metric for this, right? Like a machine, put your hand down and measure the hand size. Like,
The only thing I say is maybe there's some sort of stretching he did for. I'll say, like, I just out of curiosity, I went and
he like
measured.
pulled his fingers apart. Like the way they measure it is from the end of the thumb to the end of the pinky, right?
Yeah, I don't like. I went and measured my hands after, just out of curiosity, and I'll say, I can stretch something. My hand's been a little fucked up. I fucked up my thumb a little bit a couple weeks ago, so maybe part of it. But
I
like I
wonder
was only.
how. Monty's pointing to his left hand is hurting. I wonder
Yeah.
why.
I
Yeah.
I was only able to stretch my left hand though 8.5, and I got 9 on my right hand. So there's some difference there. Who knows?
You could be a quarterback in the
I
NFL.
could a 9-inch hand, right
Yeah.
hand. I'm like Joe Burrow, Joe Shiesty.
And for those who don't know, Monty was an offensive lineman in college, in high school. In high
I
school,
couldn't have played
not in high
college.
school. He was a drunkard in college, but he was a lineman in high school. And if Rocco is here, he was he does college is what ruined him. He was once a respectable human being and an athlete. Yeah, dude, like this hand size stuff, I don't know what the hell to make of it. Like it's almost unreal. I'm not. I always make like T. I think is here. We always make fun of this being hand size season. But when you see like the hand size stuff actually matter for certain positions like quarterback and stuff, and then the freaking numbers change from month to
Yeah,
month, like what are we doing here? Like
it's
what
so
what
confusing.
so I don't know.
He also
And
had like it made sense when he had small hands, like because he was fumbling
he fumbled
issues, and
11
that
times this year.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But Milrow did not do himself any favors. I really believe the guy would have run like a 4.33 or something like that. He's fast as hell.
Yeah, that's what the
Uh,
GPS timing would tell you. Um, so as far as the throwing, did you watch the quarterback throw?
I did.
Who impressed you? Who
I mean,
disappointed you?
I wasn't surprised by who impressed me. So I think the three guys who came out looking the best in this were easily Tyler Shuck, who's
Mhm.
making a name for himself, Jackson Dart,
Agreed.
and Quinn Ewers. I think those three guys
I would
really
agree.
impressed
Yeah.
me. I'm not surprised. I mean, I think out of the three of them, we've talked about this ad nauseum. Dart is a guy that I feel like people have hyper-polarized views of Dart. I don't really get it. He's a good football player. Like, there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with Jackson Dart. He has some deficiencies in his game, like a lot of quarterbacks do, but he's got plenty of talent. Right? He's a
Mhm.
talented kid. He's put it on display. He's got a good arm. Does he have an elite arm? No, but I don't really care about that. He's got plenty NFL arm,
Yeah.
and he's got plenty of NFL mobility. He's got some moxie. He's a good football player, and we've talked about this. I think that in the right system, which I don't think he had at Ole Miss, like I've said this over and over
No,
again,
I
I
agree.
I don't think that system played to his strengths. I think in a more West Coast based offense, like working the middle of the field, he can shine. Right. And I think in the
Mhm.
right system, he has to. I think he's somewhat scheme dependent. I don't love him for the Giants with the current regime. That's the only reason I don't really want him here is
Yeah.
that I think the way Brian Dable would utilize him is not playing to his strengths. But I think if he, again, in a more West Coast based system, which is the majority of the league, not the Giants, he could
Yeah.
do really well if you're working the middle of the field and using a lot of crossing, like a lot of crossers and mesh concept, things like that on a regular basis. I think he'd be a good player, and I think he put his throwing on display. What about you?
Yeah, and let me put it this way too with it, like I think he has the traits where he could play outside of a West Coast system. It would just be as far as like, those early years in the NFL. I think it would benefit him a lot because I think it would play to his strengths. But I don't think like he played 6 years on the West Coast, and for some reason that team didn't decide not to pick up. Like I don't think he has only the traits to play in there. So that helps a little bit. But I'm totally with you. Yeah, no, Shuck impressed me. It seemed like he was almost trying too hard to throw at times when they went deep.
I mean, he's been waiting like 8 years for this moment, so
Yeah,
he put it
he
up.
ended up overthrowing some, really trying to like
Yeah.
put some shit behind that. Ewers had some misses. He looked good. Dart overall, I think, looked the best from what I saw.
Yeah.
My like he hit most passes. The only complaint I would have about Dart is at his pro day now, I really want to make sure I see him put some more air into that ball because he really kind of had one of the lower deep balls out of people. He was really not putting air into that and dropping it into a bucket. And, you know, that's a lot harder pass to, time up and make is when you get that ball high and you drop it into a bucket. It's a lot easier to kind of like throw a ball. It wasn't on a line, but more on that trajectory and, time it up with somebody. So I want to see him, timing sucks the combine anyway. So it wouldn't have mattered either way if he struggled at that. So just as pro day, I would like to see him kind of throw more of those.
Yeah, I agree. Um, and I think Quinn is a guy we got to talk about, right? If the Giants really, and I've made this point, if they talk themselves out of or are boxed out of taking a quarterback in round one, right? Let's say both Cam and Shador are gone, and they decide there's no way they're taking anybody else at three, which I think would be the likely scenario. They're either taking the BPA, which might be Hunter, it might be Carter, depending on how they view it, or they're trading out of that pick. But then you're basically in a scenario where you've signed your veteran quarterback and you're going to take a swing somewhere later in the draft. Now, I'm definitely not in favor of most day two swings in this class, mainly because I feel like those are usually day two quarterbacks are developmental quarterbacks. And what developmental quarterbacks need is some stability in the regime to actually develop them to get anything out of that pick. And they're often the guys who are discarded by the new regime that comes in when these guys get, that's just the reality. If you're like a second or third round quarterback and the coach and the GM who took you are gone and the next group comes in, they're just going to throw you away. Right. It happened to Malik Willis. It's about to happen to Will Levis. It happens to a lot of guys who are taken in that territory. Right. Desmond Ritter, all these guys. You can argue about whether they're good or not, but that's typically what happens to these guys. Um, the one guy that I would be intrigued by on day two, if that's where you had to take the swing, would be Quinn Ewers. And the reason for
Yeah.
that is I just think when you're talking about the big swing, the home run swing, I think Quinn has it, right? He's got the
Mhm.
elite traits. And if Quinn Ewers could put it together, all that talent he's got, and granted, we talked about how inconsistent he is and how frustrating he is to watch. But if with good NFL coaching he put it together, you're talking about a guy who really has like top 10 NFL talent.
Yeah, he's the type of guy, if he went back to school, it wouldn't have surprised me if he had like a Cam Ward type rise for himself next year. But he didn't have that rise. So, you're just betting on him, having that in the NFL. And that's a tough bet to make, but somebody's got to make it. And sometimes it pays off for you.
Yep. All right. Let's nothing else that I thought was interesting from quarterbacks. I mean, Shuck, like I said, he's an intriguing guy. He did well. He's definitely, I think he's a backup. I know some people say he could be a starter. He's gonna be 26 this summer.
Yeah.
26. Remember the big deal people made of Michael Penix Jr. being 23,
Yeah.
and Jaden Daniels being 23, 20, like they were like 23 going on 24. This guy's gonna be 26. He's been in college for like 7 years or 8 years, whatever the numbers, so it's I I mean, somebody's gonna take him. I don't want to take him. I'll be honest. I like the kid. I think he's a good player, but I'm not interested in a 26-year-old project for the Giants.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
No,
but
I
he had a
agree
good
with you.
combine. Yeah,
Yeah. All right.
uh,
Do you want to move on to the running backs?
absolutely.
All right. So, I mean, the running backs really showed up this combine. I mean, it's probably one of the most athletic running back groups I have ever seen. What one guy we called out in our pre-show with Tutton, 4.32. 149 10-yard split, 10-10 broad jump, 40.5 vertical jump, 4.41 short shot. I mean, he from Virginia Tech, he absolutely blew it up. But man, there is a lot of guys who tested well. Any names pop out to you here that you remember?
Yeah, a couple of guys really came popped out from this group. So obviously, from a testing perspective, um, I think Quinshon Judkins just jumped off the screen. you know. So he ran a 4.48. He got up to 22.5 miles per hour. He had a 38.5-inch vertical. He had an 11-foot broad jump, dude. Like, insane numbers. And he did this at 5'11", 221. I mean,
Mhm.
Travion Henderson's. I mean, like the guy who profiled similarly to him was actually Omarion Hampton, 4.46, got up to 22.7 miles per hour with 38-inch vertical and a 10-foot 10-inch broad jump and a 4.40 short shuttle, which is bananas. Um, those two in particular, like their athletic testing to me jumped off the screen. I think solidifying that. I think to me, Hampton's a first round pick. You could argue he's the best running back in this class, even above Genty. But Judkins is not too far behind him.
Yeah, yeah, man. There, I mean, Judkins, he's that explosiveness shows up on tape, and he showed it here. I think the one of the number one guys that caught my eye, is my guy, our guy, Taj Brooks.
Yeah, I was leaving him for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
he went out and had a 6'9" three-cone drill and a 406 shuttle drill. He was number one among running backs for both of those. And to put it in perspective, for the 20-yard shuttle, he was 406. The next best was Woody Marks with 424. I mean, he absolutely killed it. And then three cone, if we did him overall, the whole thing, he was a little bit further down, but he was number one for running backs. But, for a guy who's built like a goddamn bowling ball at 5'9", 214 pounds, ran a 152, jumped 35 inches, had a 10-inch broad jump. I mean, just super, super impressive day. I think he really solidified himself to me to be in that conversation for like that second tier of running backs.
Yeah, I agree. Um, and the question is, where does he go? Like, we've been doing our mocks for fun, and you see him, kind of there at around pick 150, 100. It's possible he's there. He might have pushed himself into that like next grouping, not the top grouping, but he might have pushed himself closer to like the guys you have to swing on by early day three. Like, I'd be surprised if he went before that, just given how deep this class is. But you know, I can kind of see him coming off the board right around pick like 100, 105, somewhere in that territory. But you
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, it's a good class for depth.
And then we were going through like hand size season on spaces this weekend. Doing like D-Kit and Jabri. You want to guess one of the running backs had the smallest hands of the combine. You want to guess how big his hands were?
No, we're talking like under 8-inch hands.
Corey Kiner, 7 3/4.
It's a normal sized human being.
For,
Like,
for perspective, I measured my wife's hands, who has very small hands, 8 inches.
oh, really?
Grant, she can stretch them, but still, Jesus Christ.
All right. Well, does he have a fumbling issue?
He had 3 this year.
That's not bad. That's not too bad. All right. Poor
Oh
kid.
man, undraftable.
Yeah, well, probably. All right. So I mean, a lot of good guys here. The Giants are going to need to come away with one of these guys. I
Mhm.
personally, and as much as I love the guys near the top, because I think they're really excellent, I don't think this roster is quite in the position where they can take like a day two swing on a running back just yet.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
I
there's
would be
gonna be
intrigued.
guys.
Yeah, there's going to be like there's tons of guys who are really good. I mean, we haven't even talked about a lot of them. Like, again, Alex mentioned
So
Jaden Blue ran a
mhm.
crazy fast 40 time. Brashard Smith.
I
Uh,
I saw somebody post today. I think it was Authentic, or somebody calls it in his replies about how Brashard Smith and Jameer Gibbs had identical testing numbers. Pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, I mean, fast as hell, you know.
Hmm.
And wasn't it was it Rashard Smith? Wasn't the kid from Virginia Tech the one who outran like both Jameer Gibbs and Saquon Barkley on like that side by side
Yep.
tooting? Like, I mean, there are some crazy athletes in this running back group.
TJ Giddens, Scatabo jumped almost 40 inches. Trevon Henderson, like everybody tested well. RJ Harvey.
Yeah, I mean, like it's just confirmation of what we kind of knew all year. This is a special group. It's just a special group. You want to come away with one of these guys. There's like close to 30 guys who are going to have draftable grades. It's insane. So you got to get one of these guys. I mean, with one of our picks, we got to come away with a running back here. So we'll see who they get.
Yep, I agree. All right, do you want to talk some wide receivers?
Yeah, I mean, let's go over it. I think we should do this in a focused way where, I mean, it's worth mentioning the top guys very briefly, but let's talk about where the Giants might land. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the top tester, I think, was very easily, Golden from Texas. Ran a
Did you see that
blazing
coming?
4.3. No.
I
And in
didn't.
fact, he ran, I mean, his official time was a 4.29, and he got up to 23.57 miles per hour.
And
Bananas.
this is a guy, this is not your typical like John Ross. This guy runs fast straight. This guy can move. His stop start ability, his agility, it's very reminiscent of like a Stephon Diggs. Like very, very impressive movement ability.
And he measured in at 5'11", 191. Um, just he's a lot of people now are saying that he's going to be the first wide receiver off the board, not including Travis Hunter. Wouldn't shock me, right? Like you and I were not enamored with Ted McMillan's he's a good football player, very
Hmm.
good football player. But when you watch him, you're like his superpower is just that he's a big dude, right? He's a
Yeah.
smooth athlete, but he uses his size very well, very Drake London like. Um, I think easy to predict that he's going to have a very good NFL career, right? Like guys like that, as long as they don't get hurt and you know how to use them as a quarterback, they're going to get production. But I don't see the home run ability with Ted McMillan that I think a lot of people are looking for at the top of the draft. They're looking for the Goldens, right? The guys with the elite speed, the breakaway ability. Wouldn't shock me. Now, I think Golden is rising. I think his tape is really impressive. In fact, his teammate Isaiah Bond is the one who said, "I'm going to run a 4.21 or something like that," right? And he didn't.
Hmm.
And it was actually Golden who quietly ran the 4.29. So very impressive showing from him. Another guy I want to mention because he was our wide receiver too, behind Travis Hunter, Luther Burden. This is rare. He came in taller than expected.
Yeah, doesn't happen often.
I mean, everybody thought he was gonna be 5'10". The guy came in measuring an even 6 feet tall. 6 feet 206, very solid, very Malik Neighbors, actually a little taller than Malik Neighbors, but very much like the
Hmm.
Malik Neighbors frame. He plays a lot like Malik Neighbors, right? I think we may even mentioned that.
Did you see he said at the combine he's like one of the receivers he models his game after is Malik
Is
Neighbors?
Malik. I can
Mhm.
see it, right? I mean, he has the same body type, the same explosive ability. Maybe not quite the athlete that Neighbors was. He definitely doesn't have quite the speed. I think Neighbors ran like a 4.33 or something like that, or 4.35.
4.35, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and not too far behind. You ran a 4.41 here, but you got up to
Yeah.
22.8 miles per hour. Like remember, like the 40 time is an arbitrary thing. It can be affected by a lot of things. It's just that 40 yards. Number one, it's that 40-yard line, but it's also like your ability to run in a straight line. If you even alter slightly from the straight line, that'll lower your 40 time. That GPS speed, I think, is actually more telling nowadays. Like, what's your top speed? 22.8 miles per hour is insanely elite. Um, I mean, the only guy faster was Golden at 23.57. So really, really impressive testing. And I think it matches what you see on the tape that Burden is an elite athlete playing wide receiver. And he's actually a very good route runner. He's a very good football player. He's strong. He breaks tackles. He's a guy whose performance and production was dragged down heavily by quarterback play, heavily. And I think he's actually being undervalued in this class. If he slides, somebody at the back half of the first round is probably going to get an outstanding wide receiver one type player. But
Hmm.
but his testing matched what I think we saw on tape.
You know, One thing that's funny is just backing up a little bit to the Tet McMillan versus Golden thing. It's funny to think about because I think like 10 years ago, you ask who the prototype at wide receiver is, it's Tet McMillan. But if you the prototype, when you look at the top wide receivers around the league today, it's Golden. It's those guys that are like 5'11", 6 foot, around 200 pounds, and just have that elite
The
movement ability. You see them
the
all over the league.
Shamar Chase body types, these guys.
Yeah, even like Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Stephon Diggs, like they're all over the place.
Garrett Wilson's actually a great comp for Luther Burden right now. Um,
Hmm.
he's somewhere between like a Garrett Wilson and a Malik Neighbors in a
Yeah.
comp world, and I think those are the modern receivers, the inside outside versatility, like the frame. It's not just about your height and your weight; it's about how you're built, right? These strong
Hmm.
lower bodied receivers are generally really really productive players because one, they stay healthy. They're less prone to injury. Number two, they break a ton of tackling. They get a lot of yak by breaking tackles and going through guys. They're tough to bring down. If they also have elite speed and explosive testing, JSN's another guy like that. You see him producing, you saw his game really take off this past year. Guys like that are they're hard to come by, and they're the new like top prototype in the NFL.
Yeah.
Now,
I'll throw.
Emeka Egbuka did not run a 40, if I'm not mistaken, right, at the
n-
combine, so he'll
I
run
don't.
at his pro day.
I don't
Um,
believe so. No,
yeah.
I don't
But
think.
he's
I don't.
he, he's another one in that prototype. 6 feet, 200 pounds, 202.
Hmm. Yeah. I want to call out some other guys, maybe some guys that more likely that we might draft. Jalen Knoll from Iowa State had a fantastic day. 4.39, 151, 10-yard split, 11 foot 2 inch broad jump, 41.5 inch vertical jump, 417 short shuttle, 682 three cone, and a 23 on the bench at 5'10, 194 pounds. Like this guy's, you got over that 5'10 mark, which is nice. He's not like, it's a little bit more height than those 5'9 guys. He, came in close to 200. The bench, he's a built guy. He tested extremely well. I think he's going to get some attention. Maybe that's something we can look at. And even his teammate, Jaden Higgins, more of a bigger guy, 4.47, 10 foot, 8 inch broad jump, 39-inch vertical jump. And it came in at 6'4", 214. So two really good athletes there tested well, who are really good receivers from Iowa State.
Yep. Another guy that I do think is somebody that I think it might be a little early for the Giants, but somebody they could consider, and I think we would consider him. Trey Harris. We've talked about him.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of almost an underappreciated, hyper productive receiver out of Ole Miss. Really outstanding. I mean, he had the best yards per route run in the class. It was insane. He was like over 5 yards per route run.
Yeah, insane.
Elite production numbers. Came in at 6'2", 205. So again, that same prototype, a little bit on the taller side. 31.8-inch arms, like solid all around. Not 9 feet. Excuse me, 9.6-inch hands. He had a 38.5-inch vertical and a 10 foot 5-inch broad jump, all really solid. Only ran a 4.54, but he and a 1.58 10-yard split. But those are good numbers for the type of
They're fine.
receiver he is. He's an outside receiver, and he's a guy who wins with outside. Really just as a stronger receiver, is a really good route runner. Um, a guy who I don't know where he's going to land. I think he's going in the second round, but he's a guy that I would consider right in the second round. I think he has to be in the mix of players you consider because unless we get somebody in free agency, like you still need to build this wide receiver room out. So he's a guy that could have value, and I think he tested pretty well.
Yeah, no, he tested well enough. He wasn't necessarily standout. I mean, the vertical jump was really impressive, but yeah, but he's somebody to consider, especially if he's there. If you can make it to round 3, that'd be the ideal spot for him. Another guy that Alex pointed out was Jalen Royals.
Mhm.
Jalen Royals ran a 4.42, a 1.49 10-yard split, which was tied with Golden for best in the class. Alex pointed out that it was also the same as Xavier Worthy had last year at 10-yard split. Set the combine record. 13 bench presses, 6 foot, 205. I mean, again, that's kind of like the prototype at size recently. Really good athlete. Yeah,
You know
that's
who?
a
I mean,
guy to keep an eye on.
his speed test. He profiled a lot like if I want to recall this correctly, but I'm gonna say he tested a lot like JSN did. Um, I think JSN had numbers in the similar range, with his 40
Mhm,
time. Maybe he ran a 4.5 because I think he was dealing with an injury, but like very similar, like 10-yard split, like short area quickness, kind of similar size guy. I like
mhm.
Jalen Royals a lot. And I think he's going to be a quality player somewhere on day two. Another guy the Giants should consider. But like again, it's a solid class. It's not a great class, but these are all like really solid wide receiver two types.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you. Do you have anybody else you want to call out?
Nobody right now. I mean, I think Jaden Higgins tested very well. He's probably the most prototypical X receiver in the class outside of Ted McMillan. And I think he's going to find himself getting his name called potentially even in the back half of round one, maybe early round two. But for somebody who wants like a pure X, he's really an excellent player out of Iowa State. He tested very well but other than that, no, I think we got to, I mean, we'll probably have to do a wide receiver episode for the day, really the late day two, day three guys to be more in range of where the Giants might take somebody, I think. But again, if they decide to swing early, I think the group we're talking about is, it's going to be someone from that batch. You're talking about the Higgins, the Harris, the Royals, those guys are probably your day two targets.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right. Tight end wasn't an overly impressive group, but did you have anything you noted from there?
Nothing in particular. I mean, I think I've paid more attention to the drills for the tight ends
Hmm.
because I think that kind of matters more but although some people just love their freak athletes, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Harold
tight
Fannin
end,
Jr.
it does
didn't.
matter.
Right. I mean, it does matter. Harold Fannin Jr. was fine. I think he tested like average. I mean, his came in low on the size end at 6'3", 241, but we knew
R-
that,
He did well in the three cone and the shuttle, yeah, which is
which
noteworthy.
which is important for a tight end. But he ran nothing special, a 4.71. He had a 34-inch vertical, a 9.9 foot, 10-inch broad jump, like all good testing. But I think we make note of this. He was our tight end one, and I think that's based purely on production and tape. But we noted it when we went through his film. He's not, we even said, I don't think this guy's going to test great at the combine. He doesn't
Hmm.
look like an elite athlete. Some guys are just really productive, good players. And I think Fannin falls into that category. Um,
Agreed.
there were some guys who tested crazy at tight end. Um, I don't know
Yeah,
if you have it pulled up, but
I didn't see anybody that crazy. One guy, this guy ended up being the number one athlete. Not a not a big name at all. Was CJ Dipre, I believe. He's an
Mhm.
Alabama tight end. And he ran a 4.69 10-foot broad jump, 34.5-inch vertical jump, 32 reps on the bench. So more than any offensive tackle. Almost 6'5", 256 pounds. They used him a lot as like a fullback and such this year. But he's an interesting one. Another guy who really stood out was Terrence Ferguson from Oregon. Uh
Yeah.
4.63, 10-foot, 2-inch broad jump, 39-inch vertical jump, 6'5", 247 pounds. Those are a couple guys that stood out to me. Do you have anybody you wanted to call out?
Jalen Conyers
Mm-hmm.
tested really well from Texas Tech. He came in with really good athletic testing. Um, Elijah Arroyo tested very well. I think that matches his tape.
I thought
Um,
Elijah Arroyo didn't test.
maybe I'm going by his pre combine testing. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I thought where did I get his numbers from? I guess he didn't test. Oh, that's right.
yeah,
He was injured. I'm sorry. Yeah, never mind
yeah.
that. He was
I know
injured.
they gave like Warren and Arroyo high athletic testing, but I think those are off like GPS numbers.
Gotcha. Okay. No, I mean I think that's it. I think the one guy who tested and did everything was really Fannin of the notable names.
Hmm. Um,
W-
yeah,
Would you
Mason Taylor didn't test.
would you take a swing on Harold Fannin if he's there at pick 103, our usual spot to take a tight end?
Yes, yes, I would because I love Fannin, but man, Yeah, we got to start addressing some other positions, but I do love Finn, and I do think he's going to be a good tight end at the very least. I think at the very least he could be like, I think honestly not a bad comp for him. I think he could be Isaiah Likely.
I had the exact same comp for him.
There you
Talking
go.
recently to
Yeah.
somebody, I mean, yeah, he's that guy, right? He's like your receiver tight end who's really productive. It doesn't look like an elite athlete, but just can be very, very useful. And the kind of guy where he's producing, and you're like, why did everybody pass on this guy? And likely went right in that territory. He went somewhere in the 100 to 112 range, somewhere in
And he's
there.
another guy who just produced in college.
And people just ignored it, right? Because of
Hmm.
other reasons. So he's one of those guys. All right. Next position. What
You
are we
want to
up
just
to?
we can start with tackle, but want to just tackle all of offensive line here?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we just went over, Membu. I mean, he obviously tested outstanding, like better than everybody else. But Will Campbell did pretty well too, man. Um,
Hmm.
Will Campbell had a 1.76 10-yard split. Um, he ran a what did he run? Like a four, did he get it into like the 4.9s?
Yeah, he ran 4.98. He hit 20.05 miles per hour. 9 feet 5 inches in the broad, 32-inch vertical jump. Yeah, and they came in just under 6'6" and 319 pounds.
Yeah, and I think the issue with Will Campbell was his arm length. He came in at 32 inches, and that's always so did Kelvin Banks, by the way. Like
Yeah,
his
those are.
arm length.
It's funny, like we're talking about Membou and what's the arm length. Those are bad numbers. Those are worrisome numbers.
But here's the issue. Um, if that's the only thing you're holding against the guy, you do have to look at wingspan, right? Because the whole point of arm length is being able to stretch and get your arms out to stop an outside rusher or somebody like trying to go wide of you. And these guys
Sure.
do have big wingspans because they're big dudes. They're built that way. So you have to kind of look at the tape and say, does it affect them? I don't remember Will Campbell struggling on tape with length issues. Do you?
No, I not really. Um, I didn't really notice it, but that arm length does bother. Do we have Will Campbell's wingspan? Do you have that? I'm not
I
seeing
can
it,
I can
but
I can try.
I know
Yeah, I
they
think
have it.
I think he was measured. I want to say he was around like 80 something inches. Like he was up there. Um,
Let's see if I can find this because all right, his wingspan is
77.18 inches.
okay.
I
So
mean, it's really good.
all right, let's look at that. That is 77.18.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that at tackle, not just interior. 77.18 would be the lowest tackle in NFL combine history.
No, are you serious?
At tackle, yes. It was the lowest next to that is Alex Kappa 77 3/4.
Wow.
At
Okay.
O line, just O line, it is wingspan is 6th percentile.
Hmm.
So I do think I think that's a concern, man. Like that is a concern. Like if you look like I don't think like I'm not killing people who are like 33 inches, but like what was it again? He was 30, was he 32 and a half or 32?
32.
So
He was at 32 and yeah, 32 and a half inch arm length.
so so just in comparison, I'll just pull up arm length. 32 and a half. I'll see anybody who stands out to me in this like under area who worked out as like a tackle. Like we haven't seen Peter Skoronski play tackle. We thought maybe he could do that. He's 32 and
They
1/4, but he's been
they've only
purely a
they've
guard.
and they've only had him stuck at guard the whole time in the NFL.
Hmm. Um,
Where was Slater? He was around 33, I think, right?
yeah. And looking like Jordan Morgan, 32 and 7/8. So it's still bigger. Rashawn Slater was 33. So that's kind of like the marker. Sam Cosme's 33 and he got moved
And moved to
inside.
guard. Yeah.
Yeah. Jason Peters, 33 and 1/8. So again, that 33 mark. A comp that I had for him, Jake Matthews, 33 and 3/8, but
Mm.
still over now. So I that is a concern for me. And I think the other concern for me is if he isn't a tackle, I don't know how I see. I don't know how I feel about Will Campbell at guard. I don't love his like fit for guard. He's not a very
He's not a
bendy
he-
player.
he's not a power player.
He's not a power player. He's not. He doesn't play with a lot of leverage. He plays very tall.
I this is one of those situations where what you're talking about here, I hate to say this because I hate to say this about kids who have worked so hard in college and have done so well in production at a high level. Like this is where stocks like just they crumble, right?
For some
Like
teams, it will totally crumble for him. It won't for every team, but some teams will not draft him in the first round. I guarantee you that.
I mean, but here's the good 498 on the 40 time, right? That's up there.
Mm-hmm.
20.05 mile per hour on the GPS. That's up there.
He had a great day. The
Right. I mean,
arms.
he tested really well and it matches his tape. His movement. He's another guy who I think, as a wide zone type tackle in the NFL, like we were talking about Grant, he can do this, right? He can be a very good player, but I hear you. Like, I mean, when you look at precedent of arm length and stuff, and the guys who've done it and that cutoff, it can be an issue, and you might be banking on an outlier here,
Which I
and
don't love doing.
especially in the top 10 or even the first round. Do you see a world where Campbell falls out of the top 15?
Yeah, I definitely see a world that could happen.
So this is the guy to watch.
I
Yeah.
could also see him go as high as 4, so it's going to be really interesting. Looking at these length, Gray Zabel, he was 32. He had a 77 and 4/8 wingspan. So again, another short arm guy, but you feel like he's going to play guard. So that's it's noteworthy, but
Well, Gray's able is going to be a center most
it's
likely,
true. He's going to be a center most
all right. So
likely.
that doesn't even matter for him. And boy, was he outstanding on the interior at the Senior Bowl, and not surprising. He's a really good football player.
Another guy, I love him to death. West Virginia alum Wyatt Milne. We knew this. We
Yeah.
heard he had short arms. It's official. 32 and 1/8. He's another guy that
How's he going to
how
hold
is
up as a
he?
guard?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd be willing to give it a shot, but like, yeah,
His stuff. Now that's a guy who was, he was already kind of a day two-ish. He may really he may slide, down the draft boards on these measurements. We'll see.
yeah.
He may not be taken on day two. He may slide way down. Guys like this do fall sometimes to day three.
Now, Calvin Banks actually did have 33 and 4/8 arms, so I'm okay with that. And I'll
And he
point
had a
out,
bigger wingspan. He had like an
yeah,
80 plus inch wingspan. So
84 and 3/8, which is very high.
yeah. Yeah, he had
So,
a more he Calvin Banks measured in as a more typical tackle, right? A little bit short on the wingspan, but nothing like but above the threshold, right? And obviously, I mean on the arm length, but above the threshold. And wingspan's good. 19.89 miles per hour on the 40 top speed on GPS, 5.16 respectable 40 time, nothing special, but respectable. Um, he might have a better shot to stick a tackle based on measurables alone than
mhm,
Will Gamble.
yeah. Um,
But even though
yeah,
I think he's much more of a guard than Campbell is. Like,
speaking of guards and tackles, I have a question because we talked about this in space this weekend too. I've proposed this to you before. Is the idea of is Donovan Jackson actually a tackle in the NFL because of how well he played at left tackle? Donovan Jackson came in 33 and 4/8 inch arms, a 33 and a half, that very solid arm length.
yep.
And I proposed this question to some people, and we discussed this a little bit. Donovan Jackson versus Simmons, Ohio State. Who do you like more as a tackle? And Simmons, keep in mind, not bad, just the threshold, 33-inch arms.
I think if you asked me this question 2 months ago, the answer was clearly Simmons because he was arguably the best tackle in football in college football before he got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but man, did Jackson play well down the stretch, dude.
The big reason they won that national championship.
I mean, and this is a guy who had not played tackle, and he came in and on the fly, like just kept getting better and better week after week. And now you're looking at it, he has the measurables, he has the tape. He has the play strength. He showed the athletic ability. He tested crazy well. Um, I think I'm going to bet on Jackson.
That's what we ended up saying too.
Oh, you guys at your space.
Mm-hmm.
I think
After
he's
you
the better.
left.
I think. Oh yeah, I think he's the better bet as a football player, as a draft pick, right? Because I
Hmm.
feel like that as a guard, he has the upside of like a Pro Bowler at guard, maybe an All Pro guard. He's really good as a guard. As a, he may be a solid starting NFL tackle. He may really be able to do that. And the question is, which one does he want to play? That's going to
Yeah,
be a curious question, right? Because we've discussed this. Good tackles get good money, but great guards get more money,
agreed.
right? And we're seeing that. Like the best guards are pushing 20. What did they sign Trey Smith to this week? 23 million a year. We
Did Trey
saw
Smith sign yet?
that's the apparently that's the I think he did. If he didn't, that's the rumor, and I think it
Yeah,
was
I'm not
verified.
sure if it
But
happened or not. I know it was a
yeah,
rumor.
I think it's from Ricky too. So I think it's pretty accurate. In terms of like the free agency stuff. Like I think he's around 23 million a year. Um, if you can see your upside being like a Trey Smith type guard, which I think Jackson could easily, be projected into, um, you're talking about a guy who could make in the higher levels of NFL earning versus a good tackle. I mean, like a Jermaine Illuminor is a good tackle. Is he going to make 23 million a year? Probably not. Right? He'll probably be like in that 15 million range on his next contract. So, which do you want to play if you're him?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've made the argument. I would rather play guard. I'd rather be an elite guard getting paid elite guard money.
Yep. All right.
Um, so we kind of we dissected a little bit here. What's the bad with this group? And talked about a little bit what was impressive in tackles. Real quick from the interior offensive line guy, there were some impressive names, man.
There's
Uh,
one name I definitely want to go over.
there's two here for me that I really want to talk about. I think I know which one. I'll say that one second. Both from the same school though.
Hmm.
Um, Tate Rutledge. He's a guy
Yep.
we've talked about before. You always need a good redneck on your offensive line. He ran with that mullet flying in the winds.
With a
Four
chain on.
yeah, 4'9'7", 9 foot 5 inch broad, 32-inch vertical, seven three
Beautiful.
eight three cone. Yeah, I mean, great numbers. Really good tape. That he cemented himself as one of the top guards in this draft for me.
Yeah.
Um,
Firm high day two pick, like second round pick at this point, I would say. I mean,
mhm.
who knows? You never know. Guys slide, other guys rise, but hard to like his tape is undeniably good at right guard.
Yeah,
And
if
so
he's there early second, like Christian Haynes was last year, I'd love to jump on the guy. Or early third, sorry, sorry,
yep.
665. The
Let me go over the other Georgia guy
yeah, do it.
because this is right up your alley.
Hmm.
Center Jared Wilson. Holy smoke, dude. A 4.8440. Listen to these numbers. A 1.72 10-yard split, 4.8440, 21.04 miles per hour on the GPS, 32-inch vertical at 6'3", 310 pounds with a 9 foot 4-inch broad jump, a 4.56 short shuttle with 32 and 3/8 inch arms. Holy crap.
Yeah, yeah,
He
man.
t- he tested like Jason Kelsey.
He did. He is a freak, dude. I mean, he didn't do the three cone like Kelsey did. Would love to see him do that. But what's crazy here? I'm looking at these 40-mile-per-hour speeds. Second place was Membou with 20.28. Third place is Will Campbell with 20.05. Jared Wilson 21.04. He ran almost a full mile per hour better than Will Campbell, who was in third place. I mean, it's incredible. And he falls into what we talked about. Those guys who kind of are at that very, very like top 3 percentile of top 3, top 5 percentile of this like 40-yard dash. It translates, man. Jared Wilson's only a 1-year starter, but man, he is a guy I want to look into the tape a little bit more. But those numbers, holy shit. caught my eye, man.
I mean, he didn't have like a ton of production, but he was good in his 1 year. He was very
Hmm.
solid. The question is like, for a guy who tests like Jason Kelsey, and seriously, like go back and look at. Actually, I'm going to look at Jason Kelsey's numbers right now because because I think it's worth comparing them because I remember they were like bananas. So here's Kelsey's numbers. He came in at 6'2", 280. Obviously, different era, but smaller player. But he had his 40-yard time was 4.93, so he's faster. His 10-yard split was 1.76. What was this guy?
172, I believe.
Okay. His vertical was Kelsey was at 30 and a half inches. This guy was 30, what, 32,
32.
which is sick. A broad Kelsey had a broad jump of 9 feet 2 inches.
He had 9 feet 4 inches.
And Kelsey did do the short shuttle and the three cone, which are really important for interior line. He tested elite there with a 10-second short shuttle and a 9.93 cone. And we don't have that on him.
We
Um,
have we have the short shuttle. He
what was
ran a
it?
4.56, so significantly worse
I'm sorry,
than
4.14 for. I'm sorry, it was
yeah,
4.14 for
yeah.
Kelsey.
So significantly worse than Kelsey because that's where
Right.
Kelsey really thrived. I mean, he was 98th percentile on the shuttle and 97th percentile on the three cone. While that short shuttle's middle of the pack at best, and you run a three cone, but the
And
rest
that's
of it's
really important for interior offensive linemen. But at the same time, it's like, I mean, everything else is checking out as like an athletic freak. So the question is, how high does he go based on this testing, right? I mean, he doesn't have the resume to push high, but is he no longer a day three pick is the question. Is he a
Mhm.
day two pick now? And
I think he
I don't know
is.
how I don't know how comfortable I feel taking another center on day two, especially one
Mhm.
where you're basically betting on athletic upside. Um, but if he's there again, if we're into day three and he's falling, 'cause you just don't know, right? You have to see how the whole board plays out. Um, I mean, JMS is your guy, but like we're 2 seasons in and he's thoroughly unimpressive so far. Are you going to turn down a guy like this who has the size, by the way, to hold up as a guard? He's not small. He has the
Mhm.
size and strength to potentially hold up as a guard. So we'll see. But he's an interesting prospect.
Yeah, man. Alex pointed out apparently he had a 1.2% allowed pressure rate in his first year, elite number. So,
Yeah.
that's pretty impressive. A
And
guy
he's
I want to
he's
look into more.
productive. Just 1 year. The only thing is this the sample size issue. But again, when you test like this, you catch people's eyes.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, if he plays 2 years, maybe he's a first round pick. So that's something to, keep an eye on and monitor. And, maybe that's a move worth
I mean,
making that's going to pay off in the
if,
end.
if your testing is comparing to Jason Kelsey,
Yeah.
it's going to get noticed. All
All
right.
right. Let's keep moving through these. I think the edge group is definitely always one worth noting every single year. And this year was no exception to that. We had some absolute freaks. And one that, we called out earlier in Shamar Stewart.
Yep.
Shamar Stewart at 6'5", 267 pounds. He ran almost an identical day to Miles Garrett. 4.59 40-yard dash, 1.58 10-yard split, 10 feet 11-inch broad jump, and a 40-inch vertical jump. Absolute crazy day for him. Then another guy, I'm going to let you introduce your boy, the guy that I shit on a little bit, but had a really good day, Landon Jackson. You want to talk
Mm-hmm.
about him a little bit?
Let me pull up his stuff here because I was looking at some other things here. But yeah, I mean Jackson tested. Jackson is the Ben Sinnott of this class, right? My guy that I was like kind of like banging the table for, and then
Yeah.
he like who like you're like, oh, I
But
don't
then he
know, he's
jumped
good.
high.
You're like yeah, you're like I don't know, he's good, but I don't know if I take it out. And then he freaking tests like freaking the edge version of freaking DK Metcalf, like he goes
All right, let's
crazy.
cool it.
So I'm pulling up his numbers. Yeah, I mean he had elite testing numbers. Um, So I'll pull it up right now. So Landon Jackson, first of all, he came in, he weighed a little bit less. I think we saw that at the senior circuit. He came in at about 6'6", 264. So he
Hmm.
was not, he was just, I think at the combine he measured at, I mean at the senior role he's around 6'5" and change, but just under 6'6". But they have him officially at 6'6", 264. So he's not the 276, 280 he was listed at earlier. So like a little lower than expected there, but 33-inch arm length, which is excellent. 40-yard dash, 488. Dude, at that size, a 488 is pretty ridiculous.
Hmm.
With a 10-yard split, which does matter of 1.68 seconds, which it's good. It's not elite, but it's good. But the explosive testing numbers are ridiculous. A 40.5-inch vertical at that size is just disgusting. And a 10-foot 9-inch broad jump. So explosive testing is elite. Does he look explosive on tape? And that's a question you got to ask yourself, right? I mean, I think you made the comment like, I don't see explosive, um, unless you consider it what I think was explosive, which was just his play style, which is
Hmm.
he's basically a bull rusher, right?
Yeah, which I do think it plays into that.
Right. And I think, I mean, you saw him consistently. The one thing I think we made comment of, which I loved, and I love him as a fit for the Giants, is consistently drove tackles back into the pocket. He collapsed pockets consistently as a bull rusher over and over and over again, rep after rep after rep. And you're like, how did this guy do it? He's big. He's not like that much bigger than some of
Hmm.
the other guys in the NFL, but he's doing it at a much higher clip. And I think this is where like the explosive testing and that quick twitch power is playing into it. And I think that's where it translates.
Yeah, and it's so funny because you say explosive, me and you think that, but it's funny. Like I usually comment every year of the draft time. I don't even know if I've seen it this year. So if it hasn't been as big, bravo to them. All these people be like, when does jumping translate for these guys? No, it's like think of it like we can't do power cleans, we can't do squats. So we're just having these guys jump as high as they can and show the explosiveness that comes out of their legs. Like
Right.
that's what we're doing. And that's what shows for Landon Jackson. I definitely see that. Like, I don't think Landon Jackson has a good like pass rush moves or anything like that. And I think kind of the way he approaches the game is not great pass rushing because I think he's a very run first guy. But if anything, he can collapse a pocket. And I think that does come with that explosiveness numbers.
Yeah.
Um, Another guy, almost the opposite of Landon Jackson. This guy had no explosive numbers, but ran off the charts was James Pierce.
Yep.
Um, Came in 6'5", 245, 32 and 3/4 inch arms. Not very big arms. 4.47
Mm.
40-yard dash, 156 10-yard split. Crazy numbers. 31-inch vertical jump. That's like offensive line. It's a good offensive line numbers.
Not
But
in this class, it's not.
yeah, true. Um, 10-foot 3-inch broad jump. Like such a weird prospect, man. So strange.
He's but we saw this on tape, right?
Hmm.
He's all speed. His
Hmm.
game is just fast, fast, fast. I'm a little surprised at his vertical because I thought there'd be more there because just how quick that first step is.
Hmm.
But maybe it's all just speed and it's not nothing else. And I think we noted that he doesn't have power in his game. Like if he gets caught on the speed rush, he's not running through guys, right? He's not able to power his way into the backfield. He's stuck. He's got to beat you with bend and speed around the edge. That's his game. And he does have advanced counter moves. He has those things developed, right? But it's a speed rusher. I mean, I think a decent comp for him really is a guy like Kayvon or even a Brian Burns. Like he's that type of player where he's speed, speed, speed. And he's not going to win with power much, if ever. Maybe
Hmm.
that's why we're seeing numbers like this. It should be noted. I don't know how true this is, but there's definitely stories about his personality that are a
Yeah.
problem in the locker room, that apparently he's not the best teammate. Um, Maybe he's kind of a guy that locker room doesn't love. Although, I've heard conflicting reports. I hate making an issue of this stuff, in the pre-draft process because you take kids who've put years of work in and it really harms their stock, and then they
Hmm.
fall for no reason, and then some team just grabs them later than they should have been taken, and they just get a really good football player for like 4 years.
because that
And
team
that
started a rumor.
uh, that team is always the Dallas Cowboys, especially if they're on parole. But but like I do have concerns that like Pierce's his these personality issues are going to drive him down lower. I think he has the production and enough athletic testing where he probably should be like a late first round like player, maybe early second round. He could fall. He could fall because of those issues, and the
Mhm.
lack of explosive testing might be all the permission that teams need to say, you know what, pure speed rusher, character concerns off our board. That could definitely happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, that's going to be interesting with him. I have one more guy that I wanted to talk about for at least positives here. And God, I'm going to butcher this guy's name, but
From Boston College.
correct. Donovan is
as
Zero or something.
as Araku.
Azaraku, thank you.
Yeah.
He's 6'2" and a half, 248 pounds. So smaller guy, but 34-inch arms. Very
Hmm.
good arm length. Didn't run the 40. Didn't run the did so obviously no 10-yard split. The rest of his numbers though, pretty great. 35.5-inch vertical jump, very good. 9 foot 11-inch broad jump is good. 6'9" 3-cone. That was the best of all edges by a good margin. 419 20-yard shuttle. That was the best by edges by a good margin. And a 22-inch reps on the bench. Again, pretty solid. I mean, overall had a really good day. He's somebody who definitely interests me.
Yeah. Little undersized, but like you said, the arm length does kind of matter here because the size is less of an issue if you have the arm length and the wingspan to make up for it, because you can create a little separation from tackles. Uh, Productive player, good player at Boston College. So I mean, I think the in this case, the measurables help alleviate some of the concerns you had going into when you knew his height and his weight, even though the tape was good. Um, I think he's largely another speed guy, but I do think it helps, right? I think it helps his case. So um, he's a guy that I see going very early second round, maybe sneaking into first. I don't think so, but definitely I think in that early part of the second.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean the only guys I wanted to just call out, Prince Yuma Melon or whatever you say his name is, did not have a good day. The guy we loved his tape. He only ran a 4.72 at 244 pounds.
Yeah,
Pretty good
not good.
explosive. Yeah, pretty good explosive numbers with 10 foot 6 inches and 38 inches from the vert, but like, yeah, not great, especially for a guy that's kind of a speed rusher. Kyle Kennard's a guy I've liked in the past, but only 254 pounds. He ran a 4.73, and he's played a lot of linebacker at South Carolina. That wasn't great to see. So, those are two guys that kind of disappointed me.
We should talk about the tackles. What do you think?
Yeah,
I mean, I think with the tackles, I was a little surprised. The Michigan guys did not really test. They didn't do great on the bench. Didn't put
yeah.
up many reps.
They didn't test at all outside of the bench.
Right, and they didn't do a great job there. So they're gonna have to do better than that in their pro day. Um, Although, they do have, I think their arm length might be a little bit of an issue. Although Mason Graham's only 32-inch arms, he should have done better than that, I
Yeah,
think.
he should have.
But again, his tape is his tape. Um, a guy worth noting, I think a guy who tested really well on the interior was Derek Harmon,
Oh yeah,
from Oregon. We've talked about him, and I think he's a guy whose stock is rising. I think he was already kind of a borderline first round pick. I'd be surprised at this point if he's not in the first round, Monty. But these numbers are really excellent. He came in at 6'4", 313. He ran a 4.97 at that size. And just stop right there. 34.3-inch arms, or 30.4-inch arms. 4.97 with a 1.77 10-yard split at 6'4", 313, 10.4-inch hand size. And you see the way he plays, like he's a big dude who plays fast. And I think that's a nice combination of athletic traits with, with his size, his play style. So I think he did himself a lot of good here, earned some money. I think he cemented himself really as like a back half of round one player.
yeah. No, I agree with you. He didn't, he only did that 40, but that was enough. Uh, the other guy who really had a good day, and I'm gonna have to start paying a lot more attention to, is Ty Robinson from
Yep.
Nebraska. He's a guy we tried to watch but couldn't get tape on, but hopefully that gets tape on him soon. Uh, he
I've
Ty
watched
Rob.
I've definitely watched some Nebraska games where I try to
Mhm.
catch him on, as much as I can. I mean, yeah, go ahead, go through his testing and I'll tell you what I think of him.
Yeah, I mean, he ran a 4.83. He had the best miles per hour of anybody in that 40. From the interior defensive lineman, 171 split, 9 foot 11-inch broad jump, 33.5-inch vertical, 4.5 short shovel, 7.5 8.3 cone, and 28 reps on the bench.
Mm. He's a he's a good player. He doesn't play agile, and I think agility matters on the defensive tackle position. We'll have to try to get real film on him, but whatever I can see, he's kind of stiff when you watch him. He's like
Mhm.
he's kind of like an ironing board out there. He stands up, pushes guys backwards. I mean, he's not Deion Walker, but he's not that kind of leverage guy. But he's a good player. He's a little stiff. I don't think he has the agility that some of these other guys do. So I don't think I feel comfortable taking him very early in the draft. I think to me he's firmly a day three guy, but he's a good football player. And with this testing, he'll end up probably going a little higher than he would have otherwise. So good for him. He earned some money.
Yeah. Some guy, speaking of, who didn't earn some money, it was the guy you just mentioned. Deanne Walker did not have a
Hmm.
good day. He didn't
Hmm.
run, but 8 foot 8-inch broad jump and only jumped 25 inches or 20, yeah, 25 inches in the vertical jump.
Not good, Dion. And yeah, this is we
For
never
a
liked
guy who's
Dion
supposed to be
Walker.
an athlete who's just like, maybe, this guy he plays upright, but he's supposed to be a big athletic guy. And he came out and did that.
Yeah, do
He's
you
going to
remember in
fall.
the beginning of the season, he was being talked of as a top 10 overall pick,
Mhm.
second DT off the board after Mason Graham. And we watched him early in the season and we're like, are you sure about this? Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
look good to me. And I think unfortunately his performance this year backed up our concerns. It just didn't have a great job. Now, to be fair to him, he played an obscene number of snaps. Like
Mhm.
they worked him to death in Kentucky. But his testing is not great, his tape is not great, his leverage is not great for the D tackle position.
I think he's
Um,
falling to day three.
he's beginning to look like a UDFA to me. I'll be honest.
Hey, if we were a fan of Leonard Taylor last year, and he went UDFA. So
But Leonard Taylor, I actually liked.
yeah, I did too. And
I thought Leonard Taylor was awesome. I was like, why is this guy not getting drafted? Like, yes, he didn't test well. Like, he tested like meh, right? It
mhm,
wasn't very good, but his tape was outstanding. His
yep,
tape was outstanding, really it was. And he was playing out of position last year. And I was like, why is this guy not getting drafted? Walker, I don't like anything about his game.
yeah, he's just a big dude, big dude. But
Yeah.
he's productive. You can give him that, but I just don't like how his production comes.
Yep. All right,
Right.
let's go quickly
Who else
through
we gone through?
linebackers and see. I mean, just to mention a couple of guys here. I don't want to go too crazy here with linebackers. I mean, I think you did see Jahad Campbell of Alabama test very well. Um, he's a guy who's being mocked mid first round,
He
which
came
is
in light
high.
though.
He did come in light. He came in at 235,
Mhm,
just under 6'3", 235. But he's a speed guy, right? So the question
mhm.
is he an edge? Or is he an off-ball linebacker? And the answer is yes. Like
Yeah.
he's one of these tweeners, right? There's a couple of these guys in this class. Jalen Walker from Georgia is very similar. He came in at 6'1", 243. But sticking to Campbell, he came in a little light, but he tested well. He had a 40 time of 4.52, which is really impressive. Very impressive. With a 1.53 10-yard split. He got up to 22.62 miles per hour on the GPS. He's a fast dude. 10 foot 7-inch broad jump. Um, Tested well. I think he basically tested the way you would have thought he would have tested, and his movement drills were really impressive. I don't know if you saw him in the movement drills for linebackers, but
Mhm.
I think he had some of the best movement drill test times, which they don't publish here, but really outstanding stuff when you watch him. I mean, he moves like an edge rusher, and I think he's a guy that again, it depends on he's going to fall into that Isaiah Simmons kind of category where like how do you use him? You
Mhm.
know. But I do think with the right defensive scheme, with a lot of these new creative defensive coordinators out there, probably not our guy, but there are guys out there who will know how to use him. I can see a team like, actually, they're not drafting high. They won't be drafting there. But I was going to say a guy like Denard Wilson, who's in Tennessee, unfortunately, that they're not
Mhm.
going to get him. But using him as like a weapon on defense. But he tested well. Um, Another guy that tested okay was actually Smile Mondin. Remember him? We reviewed him last year,
Mhm.
from Georgia. He came in at 6'2", 224. Again, a lighter size guy, but he had a 1.52 10-yard split, a 4.58 40, and 21.79 mile per hour with a 10-foot 10-inch broad jump. So it's pretty good explosive testing, good speed as a pure off-ball linebacker. Little light, but I think he could be useful in the NFL as like a coverage speed guy. And then the other guy who we both liked, Danny Stutzman.
Yeah,
He
he
actually
tested
tested.
well.
He did, and he's a good football player. 4.52 40, just like Campbell, and a 22.26 mile per hour speed. So really up there, 34-inch vertical. He did the vertical, got up there pretty solid. But he's a bigger dude. He's 6'3", 233, and he had a 32-inch arm length. So Stutzman tested very well. I think his name was being forgotten a little bit. I do think that he's a value add if he lasts until day three. I don't know if he will or won't, but he's a good football player.
I agree. Yeah, I think he's starting to look like a value. He's a guy who I wasn't super high on the first time around when we were reviewing him, but now like where he's fallen, he's become a really good value to me where I'm seeing him right now.
Yep.
Um, you guy who I like the tape of, but man, did he test bad is Jay Higgins from
Hmm.
Iowa.
Yeah.
Um, 4.82 40-yard dash, 9 feet 2 inches, 9 feet 2 inch broad, 33-inch vertical, 4.35 short shuttle, 701 three cone. It only came in at almost 6 foot flat, 224 pounds. Really, really bad day for Jay
Yeah.
Higgins.
And just, for linebackers, like we reviewed last week, it's kind of an all around, like everything matters for linebackers, right?
Mhm.
Like, there's no like one outstanding. Maybe height uh matters a little bit more than other things, but really it's like height, arm length, bench, 10-yard split, broad jump, vertical, three cone shuttle, everything kind of like almost equal in its value. So it's sort of the all around, it's kind of like tight end. It's like the all around athlete that you're looking for at linebacker. And if you don't if you test that poorly at linebacker, it's a little bit of a red flag.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you. Do you have anything else at linebacker here?
Now let's move on. Let's keep it pushing to the next position, which is cornerback.
Yeah,
Um,
especially because I think we'll have a couple things to say
yeah,
here.
why don't you go through your guy first because he blew up the combine.
Yeah, I mean Maxwell Harrison, I think is the guy to watch. I threw him in the thumbnail of this for a reason. He hit 24.25 miles per hour. That's crazy. He ran a 4.28, a 1.50 10-yard split, 10 feet 9-inch broad, 39 and a half inch vertical jump. He measured in 5'11 and 183 pounds. So he's a guy I really was hoping we might be able to get in like the third round. He is not falling to the third round anymore. In the
He Max Melton did.
he did Max Melton it, and I liked his tape more, and I like Max Melton. Max Melton in the second round. So like,
Early second.
is this guy not make it to us at 34? That's possible. I got to go back and watch Maxwell Harrison's tape from this year more because I really liked his tape last year. He got hurt, so I might have to just watch both because his tape this year might not be the most accurate with his shoulder injury, maybe before the shoulder injury. But and just think about it, like this guy, if you want him, he's got the athleticism test numbers. Are you okay taking this guy at 34? And that's how you got to think about it now with Harrison.
I mean, speed, right? For these guys, and the 10-yard split, the 40 time, the vertical, like speed and explosiveness is what matters for these corners, and he's got it. He's got
Mhm.
elite speed, elite explosiveness. He's got adequate size at 5'11", 183. It's pretty solid. 31-inch arm length. He meets the requisite. You want him over 30 inches. Um, but when you have a vertical of nearly 40 inches, like even that is underestimating, your ability to take away those high point throws. And he plays like that. We saw him have good ball skills. We saw him click and close quickly. We saw him be able to run with anybody on the tape that we saw from last year. You got to watch more from this year, like you said. But when you test like this and you have good tape, I mean, you're talking about a guy who might just make it in the first round. You
He
know,
really might.
it's hard to where are you poking holes in this guy's game, right? The tape is really good, the production's really good, the testing is elite, the measurables are excellent. What's
I
the
could see
problem
like
here?
Kansas City taking this guy and him being a stud.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's perfect for us, by the way. Like, this is the
Mhm.
part that kills me, right? Because he played alongside Andrew Phillips. He played in a system that kind of matches Bowen's, although I don't want to draft for Bowen, but he's still the DC, right?
Yeah.
Um, but he has positional versatility. Like, he can be good in man, he can be good in zone. I think he's excellent in off man. I think you pointed that out when you reviewed him. Like, his click and close is
Mhm.
insane. Um, like I don't. I think this is the guy. There's no way I can see this guy falling into the third round. There's no way at this point, like barring like an injury at his pro day or something terrible for him, right? Like like an Ojabo type injury or something awful. Like
Yeah. I don't even know if
but
you can trade down and get him. Like I think you can, like from 34. Like I think
I think the question for the Giants is going to be: do you want to start in corner here at 34? And if it is
mm,
that somebody you want, are you willing to take the swing on Harrison right there? Because I don't think I can't even, he may not even get to us there, but if he did, that's a question they're going to have to grapple with. And how they tackle free agency is going to address that, right? That's where free agency matters. If they sign a young cornerback and pay him a premium price, and they've got Banks already on the roster, I don't think they do it. But if they
mm,
get kind of like a stopgap corner who's older, then maybe, you know?
yeah. Yeah, we'll see. And they've already bet on the athlete. Do they want to do that again? So we'll see.
But he's a better football player, I think, than as a true corner. Than I think Banks was a good football player
I love
overall, but I
Banks
think
tape.
we both liked him a lot. But I think we pointed out his deficiency, which was ball skills,
Hmm.
and unfortunately, it's still his deficiency, right? If he had
Yeah.
ball skills, you'd be talking about him as one of the better corners in the NFL. Like that's how much of a difference it makes, right? Because he runs with everybody. He sticks to people like white on rice. He just doesn't turn his head around and get his hand up there, and he gets beat over and over and over again because of that. Um, because when you're guarding wide receiver ones, the ball's coming their way, whether you're on them or not. Whether you're sticking to them or not, you need to turn around and get your hands on the ball. So he's got to fix that. But he was really good there. Another guy worth going over. This guy, I'm certain we're not getting him, but he probably will be the first cornerback off the board, if not the second, other than Travis Hunter, who's Jade Barron out of Texas. We knew he was going to be somebody highly sought after. Did really well this year in Texas, but tested very well. Came in at just under 5'11", 194, which is good. 35-inch vertical, which is good. 10-foot 3-inch broad jump, which is good. But he ran a 4.39 40 with a 1.52 10-yard split. That's elite. That's what really matters
Mhm.
here. Match what you saw on tape. But
Do you
one
see his
red
arm?
flag, 29.63 inches, and
That's
that's where
worrisome. That's
you know
worrisome.
it's gonna be like probably like 10th percentile or something like that for corners. Like
That's
20th, it's low.
something I wanted to ask you about because that's where and I want to give you a couple more names because these guys didn't run it all because these are the big names at corner. 29 29 5/8 for Johnny Barron, just under 30. That's worrisome. But guys who just barely got over 30, you got Will Johnson, 30 and 1/8, barely over. And you have Benjamin
And
Morrison, 30 and 3/8.
right.
Those are not great numbers for arm
It's
length.
Yeah. And really nobody like other than Siobhan Ravel like came in measuring like solidly, and Travis Hunter came in like
And
solidly.
Darian Porter had a hell of a day. We'll talk about him, but he's at the
Yeah,
longest arms.
right. I mean, I'm talking about just the top guys, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
nobody, like even Harrison was just what 31 inches or something like that. Like nobody had like elite arm length. I mean, if you view it as a threshold, Barron didn't cross it,
He
right?
didn't.
And does that hurt your stock? Where people were saying you're going to go over Will Johnson. Now, Will Johnson, I think, is getting shit on for like I don't know why.
Hmm.
People are viewing his stock as not as it shouldn't be as high, but like he does meet the requisite arm length. Like he's over
Yeah.
30, not by much, but he's
Low,
over it. And
low,
it
but
but has it ever affected him in his game?
mhm.
He's been producing for 3 years at Michigan, so
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it with Will Johnson. You do have to wonder about it with Barron and whether it affects him. I'd still take him. Like if I were one of these teams drafting in the middle of the first round and Barron was there and I needed a corner, I wouldn't hesitate to take him because his tape is very good. But would I
Yeah.
take him over Will Johnson? I wasn't going to take him over Will Johnson anyway. So no.
Yeah. But I do think with Morrison, with I guess not Morrison. Morrison's really clearly day two now. So I'll say with Will Johnson and Jody Barron, I do think that's some consideration of how high you take him. Even Will Johnson, like I know he's over that threshold, but like if you're
Just
taking him
barely.
top 10, like that's worrisome.
I don't think these guys are going top 10.
Yeah.
I maybe one of them sneaks in. I don't think they're both going top 10, certainly. I just don't see it. Like I think that personally, I think the quarterbacks, I think two quarterbacks are going in the top 10. There's a chance Jackson Dart sneaks in if somebody falls in love with him in the top 10. There's really that chance. Um, but I think that most likely it's two quarterbacks, and I think there's some, Membu is almost certainly going top 10. Um, you could see another tackle or a lineman going top 10. You're definitely going to have like Mason Graham up there. You're going to have Abdul Carter up there. I don't know. The stuff with Mike Green, people are going to look into the personal stuff, but if that checks out, like he might be top 10. Looks like Tyler Warren will go top 10. And you've got receivers. You got Hunter, and you could see a guy like even, I mean, it sounds crazy, but some team may take a swing on Golden very early. So I don't know if these guys go that high, man.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. We'll see.
I
The
didn't even
one other
mention guys like Mikael Williams and Javon Walker. Like those guys can get into top 10. Walker and Williams, like they can
yeah,
definitely sneak in.
100%. The last guy I really wanted to mention here was, I did mention him a little bit, was Darian Porter though from Iowa State. He had a hell of a combine day. He ran a 4.30, 1.49 10-yard split, which was best at the combine, 10-foot, 11-inch broad jump, 36.5-inch vertical jump, 4.04 short shuttle, 6.713 cone. I mean, those are all like elite numbers, and he matched that with G being just under 6'3", 195 pounds, and having the longest arms of all corners in the draft, like about 33-inch arms. So, I don't love his tape, but I mean, it's hard not to love those traits.
Yeah. I mean, it's elite testing and it's gonna matter at that position. I mean, he tested like Tariq Woolen,
He
you
did,
know?
yeah.
And
Hmm.
I think that might be the comp for him, right?
Yeah.
Because Tariq Woolen was a guy who you wondered, like, are these traits going to translate to the NFL level? They obviously did. So I do think that matters, and he probably found himself rising up the boards because of that. All right,
Yeah.
you want to go on to the safeties and close this out because we've been going
Yeah.
for a while here.
Yeah. Let's finish this thing up so you can get to bed.
What time? Do you know what time it is?
It's 11:51. Have
All
fun
right,
waking up in four. All
I'm
right.
gonna work. All right, so let's close it out with safeties. Um, all right, so safeties. There's a couple of guys worth talking about here, right? And I would say there's at least three guys here worth discussing for us, for our purposes, and just for general purposes. So, the guy who blew up the combine, obviously, and we're not surprised by this. He was on the Feldman Freak list, high up on the list at that. Nick Emanwari from South Carolina, a perfect 10 RAS score.
It's crazy.
Um, 6'3", 220 elite, 9-inch hands, but 32.5-inch arm length elite, 9.99. I mean, a 43-inch vertical, ridiculous at that size, ridiculous for anybody, but at that size is nuts. 11-foot 6-inch broad, which is bananas. And then the guy goes out and runs a 4.4 with a 2.55 20-yard split and a 1.53 10-yard split, all elite, just blows up the testing, goes crazy. We knew he was going to test crazy. We kind of predicted that he was going to get like a 10. He got to 10 on the RAS score. Um, he obviously is a guy that like you can't deny the athletic testing. So he was the winner of the combine.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, he had a hell of a day. And we knew he would. And you got to be careful not to try to count these guys twice because we knew he was going to be a freak athlete. But it's still, it's hard not to take notice of something like that. One guy I'll shout out because he's a guy I've been a fan of as a sleeper is Hunter Wooler from Wisconsin. He started out the day not with the best start, ran a 4.57 40-yard dash, but he continued to have a really good day throughout the rest of the day. 10-foot broad jump, 37 inches in the vert, 6.72 3-cone, and a 4.25 short shuttle. So at 6 foot 2 inches or something like that, yeah, he's an interesting one. Another guy I just wanted to shout out real quick because he didn't have the best day, but was Malachi Starks. Malachi
Hmm.
Starks ran a 4.50, 33-inch vertical jump, a 4.45 short shuttle, and a 7.26 3-cone. And we know we could sit here partially and say, like, hey, we didn't love that tape, like, that checks out. But hey, you know, so this is kind of like why people overthink these testing numbers of safeties all the time. That happened with Xavier McKinney. It happens with other guys. If you look at his combine drill among safety, he was first in short shuttle miles per hour, first in gauntlet drill, first in line drill, first in W drill, and first in the Terrell Austin drill. So like, this is a guy who his play speed showed up. And that's how it is with these safeties. The play speed's different.
Yeah, I think for safety, you have to keep this in mind. Safety is not a position where these like static movements matter at all. They just do not translate. Maybe the 40 time a little bit, but um, for the most part, it's the movement drills that are position specific that really matter, and he did great in that. And he's not just a safety, right? He's really kind of a hybrid safety nickel. He's in the Brian Branch territory, and he tested a lot like Brian Branch did. He tested a lot like Xavier McKinney did. He
Mm-hmm.
tested a lot like who was like a guy like Jesse Bates did, right? These guys all tested like this. They had great tape, and we didn't love him only because there was no one thing that like he didn't stand out as like a thumper or anything like that, but he was good at everything, like really good at everything. And he can run with receivers, he can play slot as a nickel, he can be an enforcer in the run game. He's just good at everything, and I think guys like this are really valuable in the NFL. They're erasers, right? They are erasers on defense. They have more weight than the individual like testing numbers or position would tell. They have a lot of value to your defense. They're chess pieces, and they should go in the first round. Like guys like Stark should go in the first round. If he falls out of the first round because of testing again, um, somebody's going to get a Brian Branch type player in the second round, just like Brian Branch went in the second round, just like Xavier McKinney went in the second round, and people are going to wonder, how do we miss on this guy? And I feel like that could be true with Starks again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think this is a guy, I'm not a huge Starks guy. I'm not going to necessarily be like cheering on us taking him at 34, but if we did, I think you'd get a good football player.
I'd be thrilled if we got him at 34 because he's just an outstanding player. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, interesting to see if he does fall. The two more guys I want to quickly mention here. Well, one more at least is a guy that we both loved, Andrew Makuba. Did not test great, mainly because of his size. He came in at 5'11", 186, which is poor for a safety. Keep
Mm-hmm.
in mind, he was a cornerback until last year. Um, 30-inch arm length, which is fine. He ran a 4.48 40, which was good with a good 10, which was great actually, with a good 10-yard split of a 1.56. Um, Makuba didn't test wonderful, but keep in mind, he's a converted corner, and what he his tape pops, right? As a guy who's an enforcer, who's a ball hawk, plays safety like a corner, which is what he is. To me, this guy is a true single high, like he's your center field safety, right? You get
He'd be
him,
a great
he'd be a perfect fit for the Giants. So if his testing drags him down, I'm jumping all over this guy somewhere like later on, whether it's on at late day two, early day three. If he fell to day three somehow, I'm
Yeah.
running up with the card for this guy because he is a fantastic safety. The upside there is crazy, and I think the testing might drag him down. So that's worth noting. Will Makuba's stock fall a little bit? It wasn't like super high to begin with, but will he fall?
Mm-hmm.
A la a guy like Cam Kinchins did last year, right? From
Yeah.
testing that's not super elite, but he's a great center fielder. Like if he falls, I'm all over this man.
Yeah, man, I agree with you. So, yeah, I'm with you. Safety is always an interesting one, and I always think people want to overanalyze each year.
All right. We are we are I'm gonna have a fun 4 hours.
Yeah,
All right. Like we're
yeah,
gonna close this
gotta
guy.
get those ramen fast.
Oh my goodness. All right. I'm gonna I'm gonna go to bed. Thank you guys for sticking with us. Those of you who've been here, I know this is a long, tedious episode, but you guys are awesome for staying. So we appreciate you guys. As always, try to follow us if you can. Follow at He's a Giant Pod on Twitter. Follow me at Queens_guy. Follow Monty at MONTECRI5TO. Like the episode if you haven't yet, please. Subscribe to the show if you haven't yet, please. Get the word out, retweet if you can. We'll be back next week. We haven't figured out what we're doing. We're gonna think about a couple of players to go over. We've gone over different positions now. I think we have to see if there's more linemen we want to go over or start hitting the skill positions. And we're probably gonna come in next week with an episode reviewing how the beginning of free agency went. We might have some news to talk about, whether the
Yeah,
Giants made the big trade or not. So I think it'll be an interesting episode next week. Until then, thank you guys. Have a good night. We'll see you next week. Go Giants.
go Giants.